Hi there, welcome to another BioDevils podcast. Today we're here to talk about Resident Evil 4, the teaser trailer. I was going to talk about it way sooner, but I had a bunch of personal stuff come up, so I couldn't talk about it as soon as I would have liked to. But that being said, I am here joined by my two best friends here, as always. First up, Mr. DevilHunterJames. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Your Honor, on Daw. How's it going?
Yep. And then up next, I got Brandon, SirBrandel. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, uh, I'm here with my coworkers.
No.
Yeah,
Anyway, yeah. I did want to talk about RE4. I figured, I might as well talk about it with two people that I always talk about Resident Evil with. Sometimes we don't always agree on Resident Evil stuff, but we generally do talk a lot of Resident Evil and a lot of Capcom stuff. So I figured it'd be fun to have them on board for this. So without any further delays, let's get into the very first question here. What were your initial thoughts on the reveal trailer?
nice.
Who wants to take that first?
Hey, I'm
Yeah.
I'm leaving it open ended here before I say anything. So,
To be quite frank though, I was actually quite pleased with it.
mm,
I'm kind of excited though, but admittedly though, Street Fighter 6 right now kind of has most of my attention as far as Capcom related products. Like that trailer just honestly blew me away. But we're not talking about Street Fighter, we're talking about RE. As
right.
for RE right now though, like I am actually very pleased with what I'm seeing right now. It looks more quite faithful than I thought it was going to be. To be quite honest, even some of the same shots, scenes, locales, all that. Like it looking pretty damn faithful in contrast to I say Resident Evil 3. How they handle that intro sequence, you know. But of course, it's still soon to tell though. But all in all, yeah, I'm very pleased with the trailer.
I'm
Yeah,
more cautiously optimistic, I would say right now. Like most of it looks, yeah, like Brandon said, pretty good. Just a couple. I just want to see like the mechanics more than the look of the game right now.
yeah. I'm thinking like as far as like the way that the game looks like, and I kind of said this on Twitter as well. It's I know a lot of people are having concerns with this remake and them obviously changing things with this remake, but I think we got to be kind of a little bit more. I don't not necessarily want to say like, hey, don't be concerned about it at all per se, but just a little bit more open minded in the sense that this is a different take on Nari. I personally thought after seeing the reveal trailer, it looks good. Uh, Given that it is seeming like it's gonna have some similar beats, but also be different in a way to where it doesn't feel like we're playing the same game, right? Because if they remade the same game and all it was just a graphical update, then it would have just been like, well, you've already released this game a million times with RE4 HD remaster, which was half-assed, and we needed to have fans come in and fix that HD remaster for you. So so I do think that like aesthetically speaking, right, like I think it looks good. Like the changes that they're making, it definitely intrigued me as somebody who's played Resident Evil for numerous times. I can't tell you how many countless hours I've put into that game. I think it looks really good. Um, Anybody else have anything to say on this before we move on to number two?
No, I think we
It's
pretty
hard.
much got it.
Alrighty, James, you want to take on number two then?
Sure. How do you feel about the remake potentially going for a more survival horror feel? Should the action be minimized? Uh, I personally think they'll find a balance if they would do it right. That is, that still remains to be seen since the full trailer hasn't released yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with the horror aspect since Resident Evil always had horror. It was just lighter, and the cheese doesn't help either. But I think it's a good change of pace. Like I said, it's gonna depend on the Since we bring up the actions, the mechanics, which is most of the action commands. So that remains to be seen. But I would hope they find a good balance to where it still feels like Resident Evil 4.
Uh, to be frank though, I'm glad to go into a more horror route. I will say this to the day I die. Resident Evil 4, the original, is not a horror game. But my God, the game has so much potential to be a horror game. Legit. Especially with how its monster designs and whatnot, aesthetics. But the village alone, man, that right there could have been a whole ass game if they really want to try. But
See,
yes, going for hold on,
mhm.
going for a more horror aesthetic, man, I'm actually all for it because they had opportunity to not necessarily course correct, but give us a new tone and feel and mood for the game that honestly should have been there in the first place.
See, so I'm glad you brought that up, Brandon, because like the enemies, for example, like that specific example that you brought up, like I personally think that like a lot of people would say like, oh well, you can't really make Ganados like scary because they're intelligent or whatever, and I think like I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that the problem was is that with like when we had games like RE4 and RE5, which both featured Las Plagas, two different forms of Las Plagas, that is right. Um, you know, Capcom kind of depicted them as like being well, a intelligent and also b they would be utilizing like firearms and things of that nature, right? And things got very action heavy. With this remake going in, right, they could have this more emphasis on horror and actually emphasize like the like how terrifying these things could be. Even if you're not necessarily scared, just having that kind of feel for them because this is supposed to be a horror game. um, get rid of some of like the more like say like actiony kind of feel where it becomes like a shooter towards the end and really like kind of home in the point that this is supposed to be a more like subdued type of experience or more subtle type of experience. I think they could definitely pull it off.
Okay,
It's like I said, oh, good.
people that say that the game can be scary because X, Y, and Z is intelligent. It's probably the most brain dead thing I've legit just heard just now. What
Wouldn't you
the
be
hell is
more scared
freaking?
of them being intelligent?
Oh no, but here's the thing though. What the hell is Mr. X and Nemesis then?
Yeah,
Two
so
intelligent
like
creatures. So I'm like, hello, who's the brain like to say that?
yeah, I think like as far as like as far as like that goes, right? Like I think like people kind of think, oh well, they're not like zombies, the basic types of enemies. But my mindset of it is as long as they're not pushing like psychological or paranormal horror, because that's not what Resident Evil is. I've always hated whenever Resident Evil does that or whenever Capcom did that with Resident Evil.
It's more
Um,
of a Silent Hill thing. I don't know why they would even bother with that route.
yeah,
But
which mhm.
but here's the thing though, like given that the enemies are more intelligent though, that should honestly amp up the scare factor. Why?
That's what I'm
Because I mean
saying.
they can strategize against you. Because we're literally dealing with a hive mind here. Because the mastermind is controlling all of these puppets. You're dealing with a hive mind here, so they can strategize the way to take you out. That right
Well,
there makes the situation worse than behind all these zombies.
I
You
You
and
can
bring up a
predict.
good. I was gonna
Wait,
say. Oh, good.
hold on. You're going against mindless zombies, so you can predict on how they act and go around them, right? You cannot always predict something that's intelligent enough to counter you. Right, but
I
yeah,
was kind of gonna go into that. Fuck. I was gonna say. Because the zombies are disorganized as shit. They don't even all go after you at once. They don't have the same pathfinding. Some of them wander off. I've played the older Resident Evils. I've seen some of them walk into a wall for like 5 minutes while they're trying to get to me. I'm like, they're not really scary. They're kind of idiots. Meanwhile, the Ganados, they're not hard to deal with per se, but they're certainly more of a threat than regular zombies.
I think like I get the idea for like hey like zombies the reason why they're supposed to be terrifying in the sense of like or why they would be considered scary is like they're literally corpses coming back to life and trying to literally consume you, right? So like I get that idea, but I think like in the sense of like Las Plagas and also just kind of going in line with Resident Evil or what it's known as in Japan, Biohazard, right? um, I like the idea of like a parasite that could cause like this crazy mutation right midway or mid gameplay, right? And it changes up how you have to deal with those enemies. What
On the fly, too. You don't know when they're going to show up.
yeah, and what I would argue too, and I know a lot of people don't really care for like RE6's action, right? But I think one thing that RE6 did really well is that like if you damaged an enemy a certain way, right? like, and depending on the body part you damaged, like that damaged body part would then mutate, right? And then depending on the difficulty too, you could have like these crazy mutations for the enemies that you're dealing with. And I don't know if Capcom's gonna do something like that with like RE4 remake, where they're gonna make maybe the Ganados, at least maybe in like the later stages, a little bit more tankier and mutate like as you're damaging them. I think that'd be cool, but then again, I don't think people would want to deal with like a really like beefy, tanky like enemy sponge, which, you know, understandable, right?
You already have stuff like El Gigante, so I think that role's kind of covered.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like I think it'd be cool, right? Like if we like delimbed you know, a Ganado and then the parasite came out of their arm instead of their head this time, right? Like I think that stuff would be cool, but I don't know if they would actually do it. But I think the idea of like, you know, seeing that like thing just like come out of their head, right? Like in the original. Um I like that idea, and I think you could easily make that work in a horror game. Hell, like some of the, what is it, like the wolves or the dogs in RE4, right? Like clearly they're inspired by the Thing, so it's like, you know, and the Thing is like one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and it's like you could easily
Amen.
make this work, like,
Hmm.
you know, like, yeah.
Maybe the wolves will actually be a threat this time.
No, I hate the wolves, man. I do not want to see them. Yeah.
I've never had an issue with them. I just line up with a shotgun and just stand there.
Oh, they're always gonna be that one fucker that comes sneaking up and then starts slapping you with tentacles.
Uh,
Literally pimps down.
Oh,
I
I've
do not
seen
want to
that
deal with those
animation.
fuckers.
I do gotta say though too, because I know we were kind of talking about this off off recording basically. Um, you know, they were gonna change how the game's like opening starts out, and we kind of see that in the trailer as well, where like the game kind of starts off like very early in the morning, borderline nighttime. How do you guys feel about that in terms of like that setup of like, you know, making the game like kind of feel horror esque in that sense?
I'm fine with it because again, it changes the whole mode of the scene, right? Because no, granted, the cutscenes look like it could be one for one the same, right? But by them changing the pretty much the tent of the scene, it gives off a whole different feel for it. And
Yeah,
also,
it's like late afternoon or original, right? Now it's just night.
yeah. So going by like the dialogue Leon was expressing in the trailer, it's different from how Leon was in the original game, where he's a little bit more, I would say upbeat though, but more casual, don't care, no nonchalant. Whereas in this one, though, you get clear that he has a lot of baggage under him
Yeah,
with that internal
For
monologue.
Mari too, yeah.
yeah,
So the scene itself having a different, tint to it, though, kind of fits that, that the monologue.
yeah,
So I'm
definitely.
fine with it.
Definitely save that for later though too, because like because there's a question in the doc that we're gonna kind of discuss that in more detail,
Well, I guess we
especially
can move on to three then.
yeah, yeah. Before we like move on too, I just want to say too, like I am really curious to see how they're gonna implement like potential like horror aspects to this game, and what they would scale back as far as like, you know, what would have been considered an action scene in the original. Because, you know, like for example, like in the original, towards the end of the game, right, like we had that whole like, you know, action cover shooter set piece, even like the Separate Ways campaign that was added in every other version of RE4 after the GameCube release. Like I'm just kind of wondering how they're gonna replace those, or how they would adjust those to kind of fit the new style of Resident Evil at this point. But yeah, we could definitely move on to number three. You wanna go ahead and read off number three, Brandon?
Sure. How do you feel about the redesigns for the characters we've seen so far, from facial to clothing perspective? All right. For starters, I'm
Ooh.
sorry, Ashley, the
Yeah,
superstar.
yeah.
She's hot. She is hot. All right. I'm gonna simp. I'm gonna pick out here. She is hot. All right. Dead ass.
Uh, on Ashley.
I want Ashley. But all right. Barring that though, yeah. Ashley, no, it definitely got a glow up though, cause I didn't think she was too attractive personally in Resident Evil 4 though, but she got some ballistics, right? But they
They went
definitely
for
step up
more. They went for more
the model.
cute look with her in the original, I would say.
They went for like a supermodel this time, which I'm fine with. But her outfit though, the outfit right there definitely caught my eye. She now has like a giant jacket, which kind of, I think that the setting of the game itself actually is going to be changed from a different, like maybe it's going to be colder, maybe it's going to be like a colder fall, or maybe it's going to be in winter this time. You know, with RE4 maybe. But I do like
Suplexes in this? No.
her redesign is definitely, I think, reminiscent to her beta design.
Yeah, people were
So
pointing that
Yeah.
out. It's very similar to the original concept arts that they had.
Same
so
with
I think that's
Leon, by the
great.
way.
I'm
Leon's
about to get to him.
jacket.
Yeah, I'm about
Yeah.
to get to that. So yeah, that's great that they actually went back and instead of just make something completely new, he took an old design and just cleaned it up, of course. Now Leon, you don't see a full body of him yet though, but I do like that his jacket's based on a real life jacket, which they have permission to show off, right? My
Yeah,
only gripe is I hope they actually let us use the jacket throughout the whole game because come on, the jacket's swag in Resident Evil 4.
At least make it like a costume option to have it on.
you know,
Yes.
if they pull the same thing they did with like RE2 remake, because remember you could do that in that game where you could pick,
Yeah.
you know, if you want to just wear the regular street clothes, the damaged version of him, or you know the full bodied with the long sleeves underneath the shirt, like that kind of thing. Like, I think they could definitely work that in as like a, hey, like you're not gonna have that in the initial run, but every run after that, you'll have that as an option.
Yeah, I'd be definitely down for that. Now the biggest mystery so far, Ada. We can basically assume that she's gonna look like her Resident Evil 2 counterpart, because same face or whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know what's her outfit though. Is she wearing a sweater with pants now, or is she wearing like a modified version of her mercenaries in RE4 outfit? Because she has two different dresses in RE4. So my best
Hmm.
guess is going to be like a modified version of how it looked in mercenaries. But no,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be shirt and pants this time. Which cool. I hope this stuff is still going to be stylish though, because the biggest appeal for Resident Evil 4 for me, even though I'm not the biggest fan for it, I love the sense of style for it. No, because
Yeah.
Leon and Ada,
Everyone's pretty
I love
swank.
Ashley, no, Lewis, all of them are stylish. All of them. I love how they dress. You know, they got to keep that sense of style for Resident Evil 4 because that's part of the biggest important factor for me.
Yeah.
People think Ada's dress is going to be like an alternate costume now instead of being her default.
I'm fine with it as long as I get to use it though, because I love that dress. Both of them.
That's
Oh, people were
assuming
making such a big whoop when the trailer got announced. People were like, "Where's Ada's dress?"
that, and you know
But
that's
that's their trademark though, so
that
in fairness.
and that is assuming also that you know we can get an alternate costume for her, because remember RE2 remake, even though we did get alternate costumes and DLC costumes, both Ada and Hunk did not get any sort of alternate costumes you could change to, and I thought that was like one of the dumbest things that they'd ever done. I feel
That'd be a
like
nice
Okay, with
change if they
Hunk,
do that this time.
with Hunk's case, I could get, but for Ada, like, yeah, like, cause even if you go with classic design for Leon, cause now your whoever costumes you pick for the characters, the main characters, will affect the secondary characters you play with later in the campaign. So Ada just literally gets her default dress in the game as a quote unquote classic. So like, yeah, they should have given us an option to go
I
with
think they
her
should have
original colours.
given us like her classic, and then also like the PS1 model if you put on the PS1 model, you know.
Oh,
Exactly.
And
the
like,
RE6 costumes,
yeah,
pretty much.
essentially, yeah. But like, you know, the reason why I brought up Hunk as well is because, you know, I felt like, okay, well, like, you're bringing back this mode. Yeah, you have the redesigned Hunk, but like, you know, for the people that like the original RE2, like, why not give them the like basically recreated original design of Hunk? Because, you know, that's only ever the one time that it was ever used in RE2 original. It was never like used as an alternate in any other game. You know, and then give us the PS1 model for that one as well. So that's why I'm like, you know, when you bring that up, I am kind of concerned that they might not even do that for Ada. I hope I'm wrong on that. I really do, because
Agree.
I would prefer that, you know, like those characters do get that, you know, those costumes, and also the secondary characters that, you know, might not have that big of a role as well, you know. But
I would like it if you can change between Leon and Ashley's costumes individually
Yeah,
instead of, you know,
that's the
oh
biggest
yeah,
thing.
this like maybe I want to have Ashley in the night outfit, but Leon's just in his jacket, stuff like that. Like I should be able to
Well,
individually change their
I'm
costumes
glad you
before I start
mentioned
the
the
game.
night outfit. I'm glad you mentioned that. Why? Because I want the night outfit to have the same properties as it did in the original. I'm willing to bet that if you be professional, you get the night outfit again. So
Yeah.
I think that's my best guess though. But I do hope they keep that as a thing.
Well, here's a point. Do you think they're gonna have the I don't know if this is in the doc. They're gonna do the point store system from RE2 and 3.
The point source. Oh,
The thing where you
well, no,
you get points for
Two
challenges.
didn't have it.
Oh no, 2
Village,
didn't have. I'm thinking of
Village had
RE8.
it.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Do you think they're
yeah.
going to continue that, or going to
I
do something else?
hope not. Honestly, I kind of hope not. I just rather like unlock it through gameplay progression. But if it is though, they need to give us something that's meaningful to unlock. Because to RE8's credit though, at least they give you the option to unlock infinite ammo stuff and whatever, right? So it was more
Yeah.
meaningful unlocks compared to Resident Evil 3. But personally, I do not want it. Let me just unlock it and be done.
Yeah, I would prefer something a little more standard.
Yeah. I think, as far as like those challenge and completion points, I would only rather have them like keep that for like concept art and like like the little models or whatever, because like unimportant stuff, like anything like weapons or costumes, they should not have me use those because I'd rather not.
That's old school unlocks for you.
Yeah. But that's just how I feel about it. As far as like the redesigns go, like, and I know you kind of talked a little bit about this, but like with Leon's redesign, I know they used a real coat this time, but I do also kind of feel like they went alongside the detail of kind of like, kind of in a similar way to how they handled Virgil and Devil May Cry 4, where they added in those additional details that weren't there originally on his coat. Kind of a similar deal here, where like if you look at Leon's coat, even though it technically is a different coat, has like more like stitching on it, or it's a little bit more like puffier and stuff like that, more akin to his 3.5 design. So I thought that was like definitely kind of cool to see. Another thing too, that I don't think people like kind of really talked about or pointed out as far as like redesigns is like, if you look at Sadler, which I posted the picture in Gen Chat here, or
He
not Gen
looks
Chat, but
mostly the same so far.
yeah, he does, but they also added in
Which
the eye glow, which he didn't originally have.
I think I'm fine with that because it's kind of weird how he's this super boss Plagos thing and he just still looks mostly normal. Like, nah. I think he could have
But
used definitely the glow up.
honestly, I think him being the most normal is honestly not necessarily a bad thing, because since he's the leader, right, he has like most control, the most influence, right. So I think like he's probably so connected with the Plaga that he appears normal on the outside, but we all know underneath that skirt of his.
Actually, I might try something while we're doing this. I'm going to try and Photoshop this a little bit so it's easier to see Leon, because there's a couple details I'm kind of sort of noticing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm trying to think too, like Lewis, for example, right? Like instead of having the vest, he has a full-on leather jacket with like embroidered kind of like designs on it, which I thought was kind of cool too to see that. I feel like a lot of the characters, the way that they were redesigned, instead of having them kind of look like more like, hey, we have these good-looking characters and they're wearing all these like nice-looking clothes, right? Instead of making them look, very fancy and nice looking clothes, more practical, but still nice looking, if that makes sense.
I would say Leon and Krauser have always been the most practical looking characters, and then Hunk, of course.
Yeah.
Just in the original, like Leon definitely looks like he's reasonably prepared, although I don't know why they just handed him a pistol, but that's beside the point.
I'm guessing because that's all they could realistically he could carry across borders. Because no, this is in Spain, right? So maybe that's the condition. You can come here though, but you can't carry all these weapons inside this country.
They might give an explanation for that. Oh, I wonder if
Yeah.
they'll side note, I wonder if they'll actually name the pistol its proper name this time.
Silver Ghost.
Yeah, it'd be nice just to have the name just be there. It's pretty much. Is it confirmed at this point?
Actually, I don't know. Like, I
Well,
don't. Yeah, I'm not actually sure. But yeah, it's definitely like definitely one of those things where like seeing those like those minor details, like how would they address that, right? Like even just like down to the base weapon. Actually, this is not a question in the doc, but I wonder if they'll even have like the lasers for the guns this time.
I feel like you got it. It's so trademark.
I feel like that
I
might
don't
be
know.
like an upgrade for each weapon. You know, if especially if they're gonna include like attachments that you can find, kind of like in RE Village, because RE Village you
Well,
could find those attachments and then add them on, right?
well, the lasers originally was there because the aiming was so new, I guess, quote unquote, hard to do. So they added that in to help with the accuracy because you didn't have a crosshair, to my recollection, right? But now in later games, like you have a crosshair and aiming's got so much more smoother and better since RE4's release. It kind of removed the point of having laser, right? So I'm speculating that it might be an upgrade, but I do hope it's actually at least in the game by default, as an option.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking like it's probably not gonna be on like maybe every gun, but definitely for like the handgun for sure. You know, especially for like making those accurate shots, because I could definitely see them straying away from that in favor of more of like the crosshair stuff. Because I'm assuming they
One more
don't want
thing,
it to be too easy, right? But
yeah, one more thing before we move on, though. You
mhm.
guys did see Louis' design, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
first shot of him. How you feel about his glow up as well? Because they added a lot more design on him this time.
I mean, it's more of a yeah, it's more like a touch up. They didn't really change his look that much. I feel like just pop more details on him.
well, he doesn't wear the vest anymore, like I mentioned before. So now he's wearing a full-on leather jacket with like more like embroidered like
Yeah, he still
leather
got the
stuff.
embroidery on him.
Yes, it's like
It's
it,
it's not so drastic that it bothers me, so I'm fine with it.
and we haven't seen his face yet either. But
Well, that's gonna be a big one.
I do like that he's still carrying his Mauser. So like,
So there you go. As much as I could up stuff.
yeah, I do
Well,
like that. They still have him running around with the red 9. You know, I want to see him.
yeah.
I really want. I really hope that if he has it right, that we can get it as well. Because like if this is similar to RE4, and I know we're kind of jumping ahead of the gun here and talking about weapons, but like, what else like if Ada has certain weapons, right, that we see her using, can we also use those weapons? I want to.
Well, let's save that
Yeah,
for.
yeah. We'll
Oh,
we'll
hold
save
on.
it
There's
for
a
sure.
character we haven't talked about.
What?
The big cheese.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, he has the
He
yeah,
head.
yeah.
he got Mr. X.
Yes.
That's
Design wise, he looks pretty lit though.
yeah. So that's actually one of my biggest concerns of the game. Not the redesign, because the redesign, it's like okay, fine, he got a hat, big
Will he be
whoop,
just a
right?
boss, or will he be made a pursuer now?
Yeah, and that's my concern with that, because it's like, okay, you know, we've had every pursuer since Jack Baker essentially be the same in terms of, hey, you can only down them, you can't kill them, like in old
Even
games.
Nemesis wasn't really that much better than Mr. X. And turns out, like after like the hype died down,
Ye-
it's like, yeah, he's not that hard to deal with. He's a very minor nuisance. Once
Well,
you know how to
Yeah.
deal with him, it's kind of whatever.
well, it's not even. So here's the thing. It's not even so much that that's what my complaint is. Because I don't like either Mr. X or Nemesis in either remake. Um, because you can't kill them, right? And I call me a purist or whatever, right? But like I just prefer the old way of like, hey, if you kill them, that's what considers them a down, and they'll fuck off for a little bit, but you at least get something out of it, right? Um, and then we had Lady D in Village, and same deal. You can't even stun her. You can shoot her, but she kind of just shrugs it off like it's nothing.
And
Um,
you can, if she can actually flinch though from an explosion though, but it's only like maybe half a second, so that's the only time frame you have to get past her if you need to.
yeah, so I'm not the biggest fan of that, and looking at you know the big cheese here, because that's what everybody knows him as. Um, I believe his official name is Menendez or something like that, right?
Yeah, Chief Menendez.
Yeah, so like like what I'm concerned about is that, if I run into him, he's gonna pursue me, midway through the game or in that early half of the game until his boss fight, and then he'll die in the boss fight, and I don't want that because it would be so annoying to essentially have the same enemy just essentially reskinned. And I'm sorry to say it, but like he would literally become Jack Baker 4.0, and that's what I hope is not going to be the case here.
Yeah, what
Uh,
can you even make
for,
him do besides grab or punch you without revealing his like boss fight stuff before the boss fight.
Well, they could easily modify it where he could shoot at tendrils now, but if they, I wouldn't necessarily care that he would be pursuer. I'd be fine with it because honestly, my one of the ideas I had for RE4 as an idea was each area, 3 main areas, so village, castle, and whatever the fuck the last area is, the island, should have a pursuer type enemy that you fight. So I don't care who it would be in the first area. I wanted to be Super Salvador as a potential pursuer, right? But it's something that you can actually kill. I do agree with Dom in the sense that we should at least kill a pursuer now versus them being completely unsolvable. But in this case though, like Mendez is a pursuer though, we should damage him and make him fuck off for a good while. I do agree with that sense, right?
Yeah, because
I was gonna say I can't.
Yeah.
I don't agree with there being a pursuer in every area. I think that's gonna get very old and boring because it's the same routine
I
over and
strongly
over.
disagree. You know why? Because each area will have different type of enemies, right? For example, I wanted what's that thing called that you fight in sewers, whatever, in the castle? Because that
Novistadors?
thing, yeah, that thing is technically is a pursuer because you can't start damage it until you freeze it, right?
Oh
I
no,
want
not
that,
Novistadors. Those are the bugs. You talk about the right hand, whatever his name is. He has a
yeah,
name.
the right hand, yeah, the right hand. I want
for
that's literally the
Dugo?
same concept. Yeah, the concept is literally the same for that though, but I'll just for that one area, I want to be pursued by him again. That's what I want as a pursuer for at least that for the castle.
So, going off of that idea, right? Like, I wouldn't, and I know we really diverge from our doc, but I like
We
talking
already
about this.
done with number. It's like an extra question.
Yeah, yeah. So, but like, like it's how could I put this? Like, I don't necessarily mind the idea of there being a pursuer in certain areas. Maybe not in every single area, but definitely for like maybe a small time where there might be one, just to kind of, I guess you could say like a pace breaker type of deal.
Like maybe
Which technically happened in the
the
original.
the labyrinth for the maze. I would be fine with that having a pursuer because the maze is kind of easy and not that interesting otherwise.
Yep.
Yeah. So like, I don't know, like I don't know, like if it's not like a thing of like I guess the way that I could put it is if it's not like a thing where it's like, hey, it's the entire game, it's only like very, very select areas, and maybe not necessarily like these key bosses or monsters per se, which is where my kind of concern with like Menendez is that like if he's gonna be there and if he's gonna be a pursuer, like is this essentially going to be Jack Baker 4.0? Because I really don't want that, and I can't emphasize that
I
enough. But like,
big concern is would be the balancing because this ain't Resident Evil 2 and 3. No, you deal with zombies. You're dealing with
Ganados, yeah,
bigger threats, right? So like, I do not want to be pursued in the same area where things could pop off and cut me off at the same time. I
yeah,
granted, that probably adds to the difficulty, which fair, makes things harder.
Yeah, that's
But
another point actually. Yeah, that you say
yeah,
that.
I want it to be balanced around it though, because RE4, would definitely be a challenge to balance a pursuer around on, which is why I say like it needs to be in isolated areas for a pursuer. Case in point, the one I mentioned for the castle, that should be isolated, only me versus him, not versus other Granados.
You don't want to fight 20 Ganados or 20 cultists, 3 Garradors, and then whatever Mr. X lookalike they get.
No, no, this ain't mercenaries.
I mean, because RE4 you deal with like 10 plus enemies at once quite often, so yeah, I really don't need someone up my ass the whole game.
Exactly.
That's mainly my
It's a
complaint.
it's a balancing factor that they need to work out.
Player
Ultimately.
needs some level of breathing room somewhere, because then it just becomes from fear to being obnoxious.
Yep. Yep. That would be the biggest concern right there. Fear to obnoxious.
yeah. So
Actually, I got one more side question actually
yeah,
to ask. How you guys think they're going to handle the brutality of Resident Evil 4 Remake? Because as we all know, RE4 Original is the most glorious Resident Evil game yet to date. No.
yeah.
So do you think that they're going to like amplify the gore, or they're going to tone it down?
I would say based on Resident Evil 2, definitely amped it up for the remake, was quite graphic, so I don't see why they would stop now.
But Yeah, see, like, cause Capcom, still kind of holds themselves back and like going all out with the gore factor. Because even Resident Evil 3 remake, man, there's some pretty graphic death scenes, quote unquote, but there's no gore to them. It's just, for example, when Nemesis stomps on Hans Joe, if he grabs you, if you actually turn the camera to where Joe's head's at, the head is still on. You know, because you don't see her die, that kind of deal.
It's weird. It's
Unlike RE4.
RE2. RE2, they bumped it up. So I don't know. It's kind of a backwards thing. I don't know. I think I chalk it up to Resident Evil 3 just not being properly finished, obviously.
I think because they want to have some kind of parity between, you know, the Western release and the Japanese release, because they end up releasing the Z version or Zero Z because of the rating system there. They have to do it as a DLC because that's essentially the workaround for horror games now, is that you can release a horror game. It has to be heavily censored, but then you can release a DLC that technically bumps the rating up to a rating that makes it very difficult to sell in stores in Japan.
Can it be free?
I don't know. I want to say typically it is, but I think in like the case of like Evil Within, it was like maybe like $2 of an upgrade. I don't remember, but like it's like stuff like that where like that's the workaround based off of the law in Japan.
Be fucked up. Capcom's like, yeah, 2 yen. Here you go.
So like you know, so it's like, yeah, I think that's probably the only reason why they would probably tone it down, just to have some form of parity between the two, so that way you can't just say, well, like, oh, you know, this version is more gorier than the US or the Japanese.
Wasn't that
version,
also the
right?
case for a remake too?
Yeah. Well, they did that
I mean,
for Remake 2, Remake 3, 7, and Village, where they came out with the Z version, which was...
yeah, it'll probably be the same show. Us in the West will be fine, most likely.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that chainsaw hits me. Leon's head better come off. That dude, I've seen the censor version. It's so lame. There's no consequence. He just falls over. I'm like, that's not how that would work. But all
Yeah,
right.
like which is part of the reason why Resident Evil 5 and 6 got super censored, because Capcom implemented a censorship law rule. So like the death scenes are honestly kind of lame in that game, minus the few funny ones that you don't see.
Yeah.
The
Like,
one with the Reaper is kind of gruesome.
I want them to definitely amplify, show us, like, I don't know, man. If Salvador comes by, have the guys holding down and Leon get chainsaw in half. Like, come on, like, get creative here.
I think I'm trying to think, like, the death scenes that we would probably have definitely are going to probably show more detail based off of like the damage models that we can get now, because that's like apparent with like RE Engine, right? I don't know, like maybe like because the US version of Village, right? I mean, Ethan literally gets his whole fucking hand bitten off and cutting off twice. So it's
Yeah,
like,
it has its own amount of gore.
so I
So
think, I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
maybe we'll be fine. So
Capcom's been a little off and off with that shit, so I want them to not play safe.
I feel like they can't fuck around with this title. Like, this is the make or break title for them when it comes to the RE remakes. If they fuck this up, they will never hear the end of it. Like, that will be a wrap for them with this stuff. Like, I feel like they cannot afford to mess around and like do dumb shit and take risks. Like, oh, let's remove this. Is it iconic? Yeah, let's remove it. Like, nah, I don't think they're gonna do that. If they do, they're very foolish.
yeah, well, and that's one of those things where I guess you can really say, well, time will tell. And maybe because on the 13th we're supposed to have another reveal, which we'll definitely talk about that at a on one of my days off for when that reveal happens, which would be like on the 15th then next week. But anyway,
I hope the
yeah.
regenerator gives me a hug still.
Oh no, the Iron
No,
Maidens. Like,
I forgot what the regenerator does. Doesn't he just eat you?
he just bites you.
Yeah, he bites you repeatedly.
The Iron Maidens are
Done.
worse, because the Iron Maidens literally hug you and then fucking shoot out all their spikes and stab the shit out of Leon. So it's like, yeah, stuff like that. Stuff like that.
Oh,
would be great.
they're gonna be interesting enemies. I'm curious because there's no way they're getting rid of them. Their weight's there. Them and the Novistadors. Even though I hate the Novistadors, I think they'll be there too. They were admittedly probably the most horror the game had in the original. Right?
Both.
Right? No, you know what I mean. Yeah, they're easy to deal with when you know how, but just in terms of the tone, that was like the one part of the game that had a somewhat of a tonal shift.
And that's the one everybody points to, which I'm like, sure. And for me, it didn't. Like, I'm talking about for personal experience here. Like for me, it didn't.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't scare me, but it definitely put me more on edge than the rest of the game. The rest of the game, I was kind of Hollywooding it.
Well, I guess we could move on to actually finish Dugout number 4.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and read off number 4 then. How do you feel about the look of the village from the trailer itself? Did you like the changes, or did you kind of feel meh? Uh, Personally, I didn't mind it. I noticed that they actually took some cues from the Mercenaries version of the village, where they kind of opened up certain pathways that are only open up in the Mercenaries version, um, which weren't opened up in the campaign version for the original. Um, and I think that was also the case with like Umbrella Corps' version of that village, where they had certain areas a little bit more opened up. So I'm actually okay with that. Um, Given the fact that it gives us more options for traversal, or just trying to keep our distance from like the Ganados in that very first area, especially because we don't know how difficult these enemies are going to be to deal with in that first encounter with the horde of Ganados in the beginning of the game.
Oh, you know what? We haven't talked about something in the doc. How much shit will a ganado still talk in Spanish?
I will hope a lot still.
Because that is extremely iconic. That is almost, I don't know how you can not have it.
Well, never mind iconic though. It's also very helpful because
It's also CS
they
sound cues.
yeah sound cues though, but also if you actually understand the language though, they pretty much spell out what they're going to do to you. Like one of them says like turn around or we were behind you or something like that. I forgot the literal translation. So like that pretty much tells you they're behind you, so you can put it away in that regard.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do hope they actually make them speak Spanish again. And not only as sound cue though, but also as alertness, especially if you speak the language. It's handy.
I wanted to post a picture of the village, but your file is too powerful. Fucking
Just
Discord.
yeah, like the village itself. Let me see if I can find a picture of it here really quick. But like the village itself, like I did like that it was like a lot more colorful in this version. Because you guys
It's a
noticed
lot
that,
more.
right?
Colorful.
It's a
Not
lot.
colorful. I say
It's a
more
lot.
vibrant, sure, but not colorful.
I was just gonna point out the obvious. This place is a lot more dilapidated, and some of the buildings are falling apart.
Yeah, falling apart. No, there's more. There's more attention to detail for certain. You see stuff hanging from the houses and whatnot.
The
Like
original game, things
it's
just look
definitely a lot
old.
more detailed.
Things just
Well,
look
Yeah,
old in the original. They're like
like
old
something out of
and
the 1800s, like that
yeah,
old.
old
the
rustic, but they're still together. It wasn't that decrepit.
the reason why I say it's like more colorful is because like in the original, it was like taking place in like fall, right? And all the leaves were like dead, all the trees looked essentially dead, right? There wasn't really that much color. It was a lot of browns, right? And in this remake, right, we have like more vibrance to the actual village itself, like uh, more color in their overall like detail. Um, and as you mentioned too, like some of those buildings also do look really dilapidated by comparison. I'm still looking for this picture of the overall village because it's a really good shot of that village itself, because we get to see
I
it from
have it.
the tower.
I just can't, dude.
I have it.
I hate Discord with this stuff.
I have it right here because I made the post about it. There we go. There's a comparison with the original, the Umbrella Corps version, and the remake version. And yeah, I really like the remake version.
Remake looking very fire.
Shut up.
Like it just looks really clean, and
You see the tower too. Tower is like half of the friggin' thing is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing that kind of weirded me out though, the tower, because it is like no, I won't say the most iconic thing, right? But it was a pretty nice little set piece, right?
So
So
it's a
for it to be this
landmark. That's
decrepit, yeah, so like it's kind of weird that it's not at least been kept up. I would
yeah.
like for it to be stuff being kept up, but hey, it's whatever.
I wonder if they'll explain why the place is falling into decay, even though they're in the original they're farming and they're using it regularly and they live there pretty much still. So it's weird that they would just let their own home fall apart.
Hmm.
So I hope they explain that because I'd be interested to see that.
Yeah, because I think I would think that, probably the reasoning behind that for like the remake as to why that's occurring is because like, um, in the lore for RE4, like the villagers, they started, when they started turning, they started killing like anybody that they deemed weak, or like they like killed off all the children essentially. There's like a whole there's like a whole prequel novel and everything in regards to that, and Beggy from Row, um, she did a really good video talking about like that prequel novel, and it's just really messed up to like see like or like hear about the stuff that happens before Leon gets there, right? So I'm thinking, to kind of add on to that lore, they're probably gonna have it where like those villagers just stop caring. They don't do those like daily tasks. They're just there now, right? And they're just following orders because they're under the control of the host or the main plagas, right?
I wonder if they're gonna keep that woman getting stabbed through the face, the pitchfork. 'Cause, that was pretty pretty simple sight to see. I wonder
Yeah,
if they're gonna actually keep that in, which I hope you do, because it adds to the uncertainty to the village.
yeah. I would personally think that just that attention to detail, like I just think that that's it's a really foreboding type of like thing to see, right? Because you're what you're going into. So I think like seeing that for the remake, right? Like would be like kind of like a good like way to build up the horror, I guess, even though it's like it's we remember it, right? Because it's kind of like this one of the first few things that you see in the game, right? But like I guess for like just to set up the tone, and also just to kind of bring that sort of experience to maybe people who've never played the original RE4, if they're going to be going into this remake for the first time, like I think they should keep that.
I cheated. I used Twitter. I was trying to get the frigging image the whole time. There was another one we didn't have. Was that one?
Yeah, that one. Yeah, and it's
Move
it.
on to the next question then, if we're done.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You want to go ahead and read off the next one, Brandon?
Sure.
What about me?
All right, fine, go ahead
I will. We're at number 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
In the trailer, we have Leon talking about his guilt and about the events of RE2. We see a glimpse of a symbol which looks very similar to the one in the village from, yeah.
From RE
Given
Village,
that,
yes.
yeah, from RE Village. I was about to say, wait, am I about to say something dumb? Given that RE4 is originally a standalone story, for the most part, how do you think it will tie in with the lore, or if it will, for that matter?
Yeah, I won't go first on this one. All right.
Shoot.
So, given that Capcom's technically making another continuity with the remakes, with 2, 3, and whatnot. Okay, so RE4 is like in a unique spot where since it was so standalone to the point where you can literally call it something else and it would be fine. So Capcom has a unique opportunity to actually make this game connect better with the actual foundation that came before and sometime after Resident Evil 4. But it comes down to the lines of, are they going to use remakes as a base for its connection, or are they going to use the originals, or are they going to use a blanket statement of no, these events happen and without specifically pointing out what happens in one remake or the original of said titles, right? That'd be one thing. And two, how are they going to connect it with future games? Because we do see the symbol that was from RE8 of Miranda's village. So, like, are they going to say like they have some form of influences there? Did Miranda come to that village to try to get the Plagas? Where kids may be, right? They have opportunity to make things connect to the whole series as a whole. But the question is though at hand is will these changes or the additions would be beneficial to RE4 itself and how they want to implement it?
Hmm.
So that's a good. I'm glad you kind of brought that up because for the lore standpoint, like yeah, we have that symbol. I was kind of concerned that hey, are they just gonna throw some of this stuff in from Village just just to say that hey, look guys, we actually connected it to the series lore now, right? And my whole thing was I'd like to see more connections of like hey, the remnants of Umbrella trying to like get a hold of the Plagas, or maybe like some form of Umbrella's like presence being there, even though it's no longer active, right? Um, that we have that sort of kind of view, or maybe even like the kind of the beginnings of like Tricell, right? Where things are kind of alluded to with that, right? But
Yeah, that's something I'd actually like them to do because it would lead into RE5 a little better.
so I think it'll be interesting to see how this stuff plays out, because like I said, I don't necessarily mind that there's connections to Village. I just hope that they're not just throwing only connections to Village, and I hope that it's not like a thing of like, oh hey look guys, we did it, and it's not necessarily the thing that fans were really asking for. I think like um kind of what you were talking about too, where these these connections to Resident Evil Village, right, could work, especially because like Miranda's been around since like the early 1900s.
So more than that actually.
Yeah, so it's like you could make the argument that she was around when you know Salazar's like ancestors sealed away the Plagas. So like she might be aware of that whole conflict that happened, and she may have supported Los Illuminados. So like I could definitely see that, especially because of she was trying to you know personally try to revive her own daughter and look for any way to do so, whether it regardless of what consequences came out of that. Um, and that also kind of inspired Oswald E. Spencer, which we saw the notes in that in Village, where like he came there and he got inspired, and now he wanted to take the symbol from Village and use that to make the Umbrella logo and all that jazz, right? So it's like it'll be really interesting to see how they implement that, because I really hope that if there are connections to Village, they keep it at a very big minimum, right? Because I'd rather more of the connections be towards the previous games, the games that precede RE4, right, as opposed to the games that happen after. Even though, yeah, technically some of the events of Village happen well before the events of even RE0, right? So like that's kind of where my concern
Was
is.
established after the game release, right? So like I
Yeah.
definitely understand that vibe. So like they should definitely at least focus on that camp versus trying to inject so many things into four, try to I guess I don't know, make things fit nicely rather than giving four some form of its own identity. Sure, make it connect though, but at least make it still have its own standing without having to rely on future installments,
More.
i.e. RE8.
Yeah, like
Like
I think.
RE5 was kind of it for me. I just wanted like the Tricell thing and just just preemptively showing Wesker and all that stuff because we know he's in the game, obviously.
Yeah, and well, and thinking about that too, right? Like I think like you know if they wanted to make more connections to 4 with Village, then do that for the Village DLC, because we still haven't seen that DLC. The only thing we've seen is that it's getting VR, right? So like save that stuff for the Village DLC. Do more stuff that is actually connected to like Code Veronica 3, 4, 3, 2, and 1 and 0, right? With like the characters established in that part of the lore. because we also don't even know if Capcom's going to plan on remaking 1 again and also remaking 0 and maybe even Code Veronica, because as of right now we're not seeing that yet. We're only seeing an RE4 remake, right? So it's just stuff like that I think that they need to be very cautious with. But
Yeah.
how about you, James?
Hold on, repeat the last thing you said, 'cause you cut out for me just a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, I was just saying that they really need to be cautious with how they
Oh yeah,
implement the lore
yeah,
here, because
because
yeah.
4 has its own thing with the Plagas, where they like didn't they like dig it up and then or bury it? It was like underground, right?
So one of the Salazar ancestors sealed it up in the bottom of the castle, essentially, or in the mines that were located at the bottom of the castle, and near the castle as well, right? Um, so there's a bunch of like fossils in Resident Evil 4 that we could see, and in the notes and in the lore of RE4, when the villagers started digging up those fossils, right? There were like prehistoric spores that essentially released from them, unveiling those
That's got the
fossils.
whole ball rolling.
Yeah, so like,
One thing though, to add,
mm,
Sadler is the reason why they went inside and started digging that stuff up.
yeah,
So thanks to that, no, the ball started rolling because yeah, he was essentially the main influence of why they went back in there. The ball started rolling. He started doing experiments, and thus RE4 happened the way it did.
If they can make all that work together, like the ties to 8 and then the preemption to RE5, I think it's fine as long as RE4's lore stays intact. And they
yeah,
don't somehow create a plot hole because it's Capcom and Resident Evil, and they freaking do that all the time.
they love it. There's nothing wrong with plot holes. What do you mean?
Really enough though, with 7 and 8, they did a good job not making plot holes, but with 2 and 3, thanks to the changes they made, it retroactively fucked up the continuity.
Yeah,
So like they've been doing good with that, at least as far as new games though. But the remakes, kind of spotty.
yeah, unless if they
So
decide to address that with like with this remake, and then also a potential 1 Code Veronica and 0 remake to address the shit that they kind of did with 2 remake and 3 remake for the lore. Like, yeah, I agree. It's very spotty, like you put it, Brandon.
okay, I guess we can move on then. If we're done.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. So since James read off that last one,
Yeah, I got you. Okay, in regards to the plot, do you expect to see some major changes between the remake and the original? Do you hope Capcom learned their lessons with Resident Evil 3 remake?
Sure,
Okay.
friggin' do, or else.
Well, I mean, we sort of kind of talked about that in the last question, but
Yeah, we kind of covered some of this.
yeah,
yes, I do think Capcom definitely, hopefully, learned a lesson with Resident Evil 3. Now, granted, though, like it wasn't. Yes, they were part of the problem though, but the original team, because we know this based on something that came out, that team, saw the backlash that the fans gave them. So they wanted to, be more faithful with Resident Evil 4 remake, but Capcom, the main team that did Resident Evil 2, wanted to do something different, slightly, right? So they pulled the plug for them. I do hope that this team take the feedback from Resident Evil 3 and actually do not make such drastic changes to a point where it's not even the same game anymore. As far as
Yeah, that's that. Oh, real quick, I was gonna say that goes back to what you just segued into what I said when we first started, where I'm like, they must maintain some sort of balance. If the game doesn't feel like I'm playing Resident Evil 4 to some extent, I think they have failed, regardless if it's a remake. It should still resemble the original in some fashion.
yeah, which is why, again, the original Resident Evil 1, the remake, I mean, that is still king as far as remakes concerned. I still feel like I'm playing Resident Evil 1, but as a new experience because they added so much more to it. That needs to be key. Same thing for Resident Evil 2, though. Now, granted, they did a lot more changes, though, but it still felt like RE2.
yeah.
RE3, it felt like a little bit.
RE3 is way too abridged with the remake.
All
Yeah.
well,
So,
and
but
RE3 remake, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but like RE3 remake, like, you know, whether you like it or hate it, the biggest problem, and this is kind of what you brought up earlier, Brendan, is that like they had an original team and they also had a side team working on it, and they had Dev One working on it all at once, and they all could not agree on what they wanted in that remake, and that's why we got it the way that we did. And I think even like a very very minor part of what is it? Neobard's Entertainment also had a hand in it, just a very very minor part because they're mostly were focused on Resistance at the time. Like yeah, it was just a clusterfuck of too many cooks in the kitchen, too many hands in the pot, right? Type of deal. So I definitely get
You
that. Mm-hmm.
you'd think with RE4 they would be having this conundrum versus 3. I feel like 3 is not as hard to put together as 4. It would be much. I would assume
You
that's much more of a debate
you
between the
think, right?
executives. Yeah.
You think, right? Because like Resident Evil 3, on its own, like its premise is much bigger than Resident Evil 2. So surely it should have been a straightforward thing. But no, they just cut too many corners and make it ironically
It's
into a
so
smaller game than what Resident Evil 2 was.
it's super weird because RE4 is so much bigger of a deal to you know I would dare say Resident Evil 4 might as well be its own brand in and of itself versus the rest of the RE franchise in terms of how popular it is.
Essentially, that's the same thing
That
with
game
like 2 and
drastically
4.
stands out from the rest of the series.
Yeah, 2 and 4 are pretty much their own brand at this rate. As far as like how much people hold those games up to a high pedestal, whether you agree with it or not. People hold these things up, right? So
Yeah,
they
like
make certain expectations.
they are popular well beyond just being it's RE. Like people don't even play them because they're Resident Evil. They play them because they're just good games. They don't even care,
Yeah.
I think
especially
that
with RE4.
I think the concern with that too, though, because, and I know this is kind of diverting into like just talking about Resident Evil remakes in general, right? Um,
We're
I
on
think
subject. It's fine.
I think like I think the issue we kind of dive alongside that is that both of you mentioned this too is like RE2, RE4, both of them are held on this high pedestal, right? So is it a thing of Capcom kind of essentially playing a little favoritism to the games that are held to that high pedestal, where they're okay with keeping those as close as possible to the originals while making those changes, whereas like the games that might not have been as successful or the games that people don't necessarily hold to that high regard, they take those risks just to see if maybe if we change these things, maybe then we could get those games to be on that high pedestal like these other two games. And then at that point, my concern becomes like, okay, like, you attempted that with RE3 Remake. And even though I personally liked it as a Resident Evil game, a lot of people didn't, right? So, and I'm thinking like, okay, like if they decide to remake RE5 or Resident Evil 1 or Resident Evil Code Veronica, right? Like, or even Resident Evil 0, right? Like, how would they handle that based off of just that thought of, are they only remaking games closer to their original intent or how they originally
Even
released, right?
actually,
You know
now
what I
that I
mean?
say that, even RE5 to some extent is also on its own pedestal. It is like the co-op game for Resident Evil, like the one people really like, generally speaking. Most people praise RE5's, the gameplay and the co-op stuff.
Whether people like it or not, though, it is the highest selling Resident Evil title still this far. So
It is a fucking banger.
But you get where I'm coming from with that, right? Like,
You said, do they play favoritism, right?
yeah, where they
Hell
essentially,
yeah.
you know what I
Well,
mean? Like
yeah, like,
where
I mean, we
they,
don't have Code Veronica for a reason.
well, no, like, let me put it like this, like, okay, like let's say even if we got Code Veronica remake right now instead of RE4, right? Like, hypothetically speaking, like I think that like, or just thinking about that, right? Like I think maybe how Capcom would handle the remake of Code Veronica is because it's not necessarily the one that everybody likes, because that one is kind of a mixed bag between the fan base where some people really
Oh,
love that game,
oh,
right?
so you think they'd be more open to changing stuff with that versus something
Versus the
more
one,
popular?
yeah, because and I think that's probably why they did that more so, or why they might have been a little bit more liberal with that with RE3 remake, and why we might be seeing RE4 remake despite having some key changes. Why there's still like there's things that we can see that are like, okay, there are aspects to the plot that are clearly still there, like Leon like waking up from the nightmare and seeing the Plagas go through his like arms and veins and stuff like that, right? Like, so that's where I'm like, that's what I want to know how you guys feel about that, you know?
I feel like story-wise, my prediction for how they structure things, I think they might cut out some cheese. I feel like that's mostly what they're going to do. Maybe rewrite a few lines just to make it coherent. I feel like the general plot is going to be the same. I don't think they're really gonna throw the whole thing out and then like mismatch it to something else. I don't think they'll do that.
Essentially, they're not gonna pull RE3 with the core plot. Now, the characterization, in RE3 was really good. So that's literally one of his biggest dubs the game has, right? But the core story though fell flat. Granted, so did
Yeah.
RE3, so to be fair though, but I'm talking about that game in particular, considering how divisive it was, right?
Yeah.
So, in RE4's case though, I do agree with James on this one. They probably going to keep like the structure similar, but adding more to it, to again to add more connections to the series, but also add more context to the games. Because actually I was talking with some other folks, last week I think. One guy didn't even know Luis was actually a researcher for the Las Plagas in RE4.
Really?
That was
You
only
gotta
the
read
notes.
his notes. Yeah, yes.
But that's a problem though. Like
Well,
not everybody will read notes.
he also
So
says it too right before he dies that he was a
Yeah,
researcher.
doesn't he say
oh,
that?
does
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, he
Yeah,
does.
he does.
Okay.
Before
Okay,
Sadler gets him.
No, it's
okay. Well,
after
okay.
he
That's
gets him.
oversight.
He's
That's
as
oversight.
he
That's
Is
my
as
part.
yeah as he dies he tells Leon I was a researcher hired by Sadler.
Okay, you remember it better than me.
Yeah. See, I told you I played RE4 like 100 times. Like I know that game like the back of my hand. Like, and James will tell you guys like I will literally guide people and tell them exactly where fucking treasures are and shit.
Oh yeah, where's that treasure? On that pixel in the left corner behind this random branch. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Like I know that game in and out. Like, granted, I don't know every single version in and out. But specifically like the PlayStation versions, PlayStation 2, 3, and 4 versions of RE4, like I know it very well. So, yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say, I wonder. I think they will keep most of the cheesy stuff. I think they'll just do it in a more appropriate spot versus where it is in the original. Because the original is like, fuck it, one-liners. So let's just throw them out.
As long as they keep the bingo line and the ballistics lines, I'm not care what they do with the rest of them.
Does Capcom have the? You know what? I think they do with the ballistics joke. I think it'll be there because Lady D says hi.
I want them to be more offensive with it if they can.
Oh, you know they're not going to.
I think it'll just be the same general line.
Yep.
Only reason I think it'll stay is because, well, like I said, they tease about Lady T. Even in the game, the merchant makes a bit of a joke about her being thick. Anyway.
Oh, you know what? I'm glad you brought up the merchant because I should have brought that up with the previous question.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about the main man.
I just to kind of go back on that previous question real quick. I do hope that the merchant in RE4 makes a reference to the Duke. I really do because they're friends. So
Yeah. Apparently, all merchants are friends in the universe. So
I got another friend in Europe, stranger.
It'd be really cool though. Unrelated, if they remake RE5 and they make a new merchant for RE5, right?
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
Weren't they supposed to have a merchant for RE5?
yes, they were supposed to have a merchant some kind of, but decided to go with what they have now to keep the flow of gameplay going. Now, granted though, I wish they had still had a merchant. Like every time you could go to the merchant's place. Still, even in between missions, that would have been nice.
Yeah, because it's
Still,
not really a flow. It's not even really a flow thing. 'Cause you just go to a menu and just do everything there. It's like, okay, what the hell is the difference between that and finding the merchant and doing to the menu?
Well, there's a big difference in between 4 and 5. You get to go to the merchant versus just restarting trade point and go to your inventory.
I would also argue too, in the case of like how Village did it, you're forced to backtrack to that merchant. So like
More risk.
Yeah.
I'd say like the flow is much different compared to a co-op game versus a solo adventure.
Yeah, so I think like damn, we should do a podcast on RE5 remake if like what we would want out of that in the future,
Oh god, my fear will be out through the roof with that shit. There's a game I'm afraid to see get remade.
It's that game and RE Revelations that I want to see like definitely get remade in RE Engine. I know it's kind of weird to ask for those two games, but you know I always argue that well as far as like these RE remakes go, right? We'll get back to this original question in just a moment, but like as far as like original or remakes for these RE games go, like these RE games are getting older, right? And granted, I know the argument could be made that, well, you know, just because it's getting older doesn't necessarily mean that it needs a remake, right? Fair enough. But I would argue because of how Capcom is handling the lore now, and also just from a mechanical standpoint, they can have essentially a symmetry between all these games as far as how they function mechanically, where you know you don't have to feel like, hey, you know, I jumped to this play style of RE and now I jump into this next series of RE and they don't even play the same, right? Where everything, if they all kind of feel the same, it's easier to get into each RE game. And also too, from a lore standpoint, right, they could adjust the lore to where everything is way more coherent and you don't have to guess like how does this thing fit into that thing, because you know it's like this conflicting plot detail that they didn't really go into too much detail on, right? So, and then to take this back, right, like RE4 remake, right, like the things that they're going to change with the plot, right, because we don't know how much they are going to change, but my hope is, right, is that the things that they do change, it will, I guess the best word would be to like elevate the plot of RE4 in the sense that it doesn't feel like that, hey, this is kind of the standalone story. It just happens to be in this universe, but it could honestly feel like its own thing type of deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I feel about it, is like I think that's what they could really do. And I hope, you know, the lessons that they did learn from like RE3 remake is that like, you know, if you're going to make the changes, don't make these changes that are going to not make sense, or don't cut out things per se. Or at least if you're going to cut, you know, or at
I'll
least
say you're leading into our next question here.
right, or and we'll definitely get into that in just a second. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is like, and I'll read off that next question in just a second. But like, I guess what I'm trying to say here is that, you know, with Resident Evil 3 remake, right? Yeah, they cut some things, but they didn't justify that cut, right? For that change. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if you're gonna cut an area, or if you're gonna cut a part of the story and replace it with something new, it has to be just as substantial and just as significant as that original thing that you cut. Right?
I don't want them to change things just because, oh, we're doing something different. It's not coherent and it makes no sense or has no lore. It's
right.
Just random crap. I don't want that.
Right, yeah. I mean, you know, again, too, I'd be kind of hypocritical in saying that, hey, you know, I don't want them to change anything at all. Because I do, because, you know, I've played RE4 so many times, I don't want the exact same story. I do want some differences. I do want some things that are very apparent as far as like, hey, this is different, but it actually, you know, again, enhances that lore or enhances that plot and doesn't feel like it's out of place per se or a bad change per se. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like even if it is like a different thing and that wasn't in the original, it to me, right, the way that I feel about it is that it should feel like, hey, this is a new thing, but it's a new thing in a way where it actually makes this even better than what it originally was. That's how I feel about it. So I don't know how you guys
I
feel
would say I'm
about
more
that.
interested in additions than subtractions in this case.
Yeah, distractions need to make sense as well. If you take something out, it needs to at least have some basis on why it need to be taken out, right? Because even though the previous remakes though took away things that didn't need to be taken away, but I'm gonna aim that towards 2 because they took away some stuff that honestly didn't make any sense, like
My
Android.
Some
moth.
enemies. Yeah,
My
the
moth.
enemies.
My moth.
I
I'm
was
just
so
saying.
disappointed that they took out web spinners.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just saying, like, you know, me being an arachnophobe, right? I was very disappointed, especially because they had concept art for them, right? It's like, Why didn't you put them in the game? You have RE Engine. You could have photo scanned a fucking. You know how
Like
big
just photo
spiders.
scan a tarantula.
No, they didn't even have to do that. Do you know how big spiders get in Japan? Like, they had plenty of
I wanna know.
axes of arachnids in Japan that they could have scanned. Okay, I'm just saying. After this podcast, I'll show you. You guys are, yeah, just. But like, again, and then people were making a big deal about the alligator, and hey, I get it.
It just
It was
turned
a
into
set piece, right? But
Yeah.
it was always a set piece, but it was like the way that I felt about it. If you were going to complain about that, you should have also complained about the moth. The moth should have been brought back as well, and they could have made that moth like actually more substantial in the remake. But nobody did because nobody cares about the moth.
Actually,
But I fucking do.
People did actually complain about the moth and whatnot. Like most of the cut enemies, I can promise you that much. Twitter was having a field day.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it's I just wish that like Capcom would notice those complaints,
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
The hell's the second one?
That is a multi-legged freak is what we would call that, sir.
Yeah, put that in. That'll fuck up somebody's day.
I wish I wish I could work at Capcom and just spit out ideas for like Resident Evil as far as like enemy types. Cause like, sometimes I think about this shit like just out on a whim, right? No particular reason, and just I think about like how that would look in an RE game, or like what they could do with
God,
that
it'd
in
be
an RE
fuzzy
game.
as shit. Like, oh no. They looked cool in RE1.
Yeah.
Or the remake version of them.
Yeah,
I mean, granted, they're still kind of pushovers, but that wasn't really the point of them.
yeah.
Guess we'll go ahead and move on then.
Yeah. Actually, no, here's one thing before we move on. There is one thing
Uh-huh.
I do hope they kind of retcon into the lore of RE4. The shit that happened in Operation Javier. If they could retcon that in. Because that
Okay,
wasn't...
Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. They would have to though, considering obviously Crisis is going to be in the game. We already know this, right? So they need to re-establish why Leon and Krauser know each other and why Krauser hates Leon. That definitely needs to be on the show.
Yeah, Krauser needs the Chronicles fleshing out over there.
Yep. Yeah, you're definitely right. I completely forgot about that, though. Thank you.
Oh, that would be sick if it was like a whole cutscene showing off that. That would be kind of lit, actually.
If it is, I want my Operation Javier costume for Leon as well, because I think that's one of his coolest alternate costumes he's ever had.
Jobby.
I don't know. I like military gear. I think it looks cool. So I think
Yeah, because you're a weeb.
yeah, I'm a fucking nerd for this kind of shit. So like, please Capcom, if you're listening, like, please put it in.
Please, senpai.
Please, I'll even pay you for it. I'll pay extra for the game. I promise. Anyway, jokes aside, yeah, let me go ahead and read off number 7 here. So I know this is one that James is very much concerned about. Do you think that the melee attack should return for this game?
I gotta clarify one thing too. What you're doing with melee attacks is also the quick time events. Because
That is the main
so,
ones.
here's the thing though, like if they're gonna bring back contextual stuff, how they gonna implement it if they're not gonna bring back QTEs? That's gonna be the ultimate question right there.
See, so I know, me and James, this is something that we really disagreed on whenever we talked about this.
You want to fight about it?
Yeah, want to fight about it? No, we really had like two very, very differing ideas on how we wanted to see that happen. Me personally, I wouldn't mind if they just replace that with like the quick dodge from like RE3 remake, right? Because I do think that that's actually a good mechanic. Now, granted, you could also make the argument that why not have both, that quick dodge and then have like the melee option, right?
So my line of thinking.
Right.
I don't agree with that because that would make your character a little too overpowered.
A little too overpowered, right?
Because Leon's not OP in the original. Like, come on.
I mean, realistically, not really. But if you implement, the dodge mechanic and also a way to contextually use QTEs and whatnot, yeah, that will actually make you quite a strong character at that point. So no, you shouldn't have both.
So it's a very it's a balancing act at that point, right? And then there's
Exactly.
also too like you got to think about this, right? Like RE1 and RE2 remakes, they didn't. Well, RE1 actually had the struggle mechanic. RE2 and 3 for whatever reason don't. So I hope RE4 brings it back because we need that
I like
back.
the struggle
I,
mechanic.
Um, but
Speaking of struggle, I'm
oh,
sorry. Dude, I do not
yeah,
want them to freaking give out damage immediately once you start getting choked. Because that shit was garbage on Resident Evil 4.
yeah,
Once you get grabbed from the front, though, there's only but so much time you can do before you can actually get rid of them. I do not want that to return.
I assume the only reason for that penalty was so you could just, infinitely get out of a grab and no consequences for it.
Well, his
I
thing,
assume
though,
that's
if you
the
get
case.
grabbed from behind, you don't take damage at all. So,
Do you not?
no, once you get grabbed
Are
from
you
behind,
talking
you don't
about
take
the
any
elbow?
damage. Yeah, when you
yeah,
elbow somebody, you do not take damage from a grab from behind. When you only take your damage from a grab from front because they're choking you, right? But they take so much damage from you before they give you the prompt to even brush off the soda.
Hmm.
yeah.
So that right there, they need to go.
They do take a big
I have no
chunk.
idea how they'll do that one.
I
Just don't let us take damage until
I
a certain
hope.
amount of time.
Okay, I hope this is
yeah
something I want from since we're on the subject of this kind of counts close quarters, right? So for the struggle mechanic, I would like the general way it goes to be the same in terms of how you have to get out of stuff. I would like it if they included the ability to use grenades.
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
well
it would give
okay
the incendiaries and
yeah
flashbangs a
so
lot even more
so
use.
so so the thing that I was about to bring up because I was saying like you could argue they could also bring back the defensive item thing from RE1 remake and RE2 remake where you could
It
throw in a
also
great
goes in, yeah, I was gonna say it also goes in
hmm.
line with the Leon's training because he's been trained for everything. Like he should be prepared to get out of this stuff ASAP, whether it's with a tool or with his own strength. I don't know.
Yeah.
He should be trained for this. It would be a good way to show that he has learned since his time with Raccoon City.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's a thing that like you know I personally like the way that I would like to see RE4 remake. I am really hoping more of an emphasis on a horror game. Again because I do want like those types of changes for RE4 remake to make it feel more in line with what Resident Evil is supposed to be about. Um, at the same time, though, I can understand why they would want to have like not like some of the more like ridiculous moves, like hey, let me go fucking suplex a guy. As cool as that shit was, right? Even I
Hmm.
can admit that, right? Like a lot of that stuff is just very like outlandish or unrealistic. So maybe like a pushback of type, right? Like that would make sense. But personally, like I do think like that quick dodge ability would make sense in the context of like, hey, his training would also teach him how to dodge, right? So like
My
it
only counterpoint to that, I guess, would
mhm.
be again, we're going back to the iconography argument.
Yeah.
Do they really? Again, this is a big fucking memorable thing about Resident Evil 4 that makes RE4. RE4 is the melee attacks. Is the one of the most important parts of the gameplay. Them getting rid of that again, will it feel like RE4 anymore? I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they have the balls to get rid of it.
Well,
I feel like it's just too much ingrained into what people remember about RE4 is, personally, at least for
but
me.
I actually want to go next because I want to tell you how I would personally implement it.
yeah.
Right? You guys play Revelations 2, right? You know how the dedicated melee button is literally just a knife, right? And
Yeah.
for the quick time events, whatever, to go up to enemy after the stun, do that shit. Yeah, that's the literally dedicated button, right?
That's what I
I
was
would
saying
actually
too at
have
one point.
I would wait, hold
Uh-huh.
I would have that button as an option as well for Resident Evil 4 remake. And for the enemies, I would have that and have Leon do the usual shit, knock enemies down once they stun or whatever, but no suplexing of course, right? Just the ability to crowd control with this spin kick. Or I would have the button to automatically do like a melee attack, like a spin kick, whatever. But on terms of if you whiff, you get heavily punished for it. If you connect with
You think
around
if you
enemies
whip,
though,
you're open?
yeah, you open. If you connect, you'll get more. I guess to put it fighting game terms, you get more plus frames on you. You recover quicker from the kick, the attack. That's how I would personally implement it to give you a much better risk
Hmm.
reward factor into it without
I'm,
implementing
I'm,
quick time events.
yeah, I was just saying, that's fine. Although I don't know, the suplex is so up in the air. Like I understand both points of view, but I'm
Uh-huh.
also just thinking about this as from Capcom's point of view.
But here's the thing
Another
though,
colossal thing that people remember is the suplex. As dumb and over the top as it is, are they really going to take that out? We'll
well,
have
that's
to
fine
see.
and dandy and all. However, like they're
Yeah.
going for the tone of the game they're going for. The game is definitely going to be a little bit more grounded with its gameplay style, right? While still having some action elements. So realistically, yeah, I do see them taking away the suplex. If the there's in there, who cares at this point, really? But if they take it out, then I'm not going to sleep over it. So long as they give us other options to deal with enemies, you know.
Hey,
If
To be
they
quite
gave us
frank, though,
something new, yeah.
to be quite frank though, I'll be fine that they took it away because like it doesn't do anything for you against other enemies, especially if you swarm. Because if you do it the worst time, then you know you're gonna get swarmed up by other guys that could hit you right after the attack is done.
See, okay, I was gonna say I wouldn't mind if they replaced it with something else that's cool and has maybe more functionality.
You know, if they give me a drop kick, I'd be down with that. Hey asshole, drop kick.
Okay.
oh, so he's Nero now. See,
Yeah.
so here's my my other like kind of thought process on that, because like Village, for example, right? Because I remember when Village, they were showing off the early gameplay, and this is like something that me and James talked. This is like around the time that me and James started talking about this, like before we did this podcast and before this footage showed up. Was like, what if they did something similar to Village, where okay, maybe not necessarily a block, but you have a thing where like you can kind of like punch and kick back or whatever, right? To kind of give yourself distance from the enemy instead of having like a necessarily like a quote unquote like QTE melee like thing, because you know
This is kind of
technically it does
sounding like
show
Resident
up.
Evil 6.
Yeah, because I
Because
mean tech.
RE6, I think, like, real quick, I was gonna say, isn't RE6 like R2 or the right trigger? Just to throw out a melee attack?
Yeah, something like that. But
If they
I'm
did it
sure.
like that, I wouldn't be opposed. I wouldn't be have as much of an issue with it because that would get rid of the QTE, so people won't bitch about that. But the melee is still there, so we'll see how that goes. But that's one way I would think about doing it personally.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
I can see that, and but I think like too like because the way that I can kind of see this, right, and the way that I would, you know, granted, I know I'm just one person, but how I would like to see it is that it's not necessarily a QTE, but it's more so like you know it's that button, and you could just kind of tell based on visual cue of the enemy, like how they're reacting, that kind of gives you that open window to like do that or attempt that, and you'll have the character react to do a melee.
That's that's also like RE6 too, where they So I remember that if you kick them enough or whatever attack you do, if they're bent over for a while, like hunched over, you know an animation I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well,
Like if
and
you're Leon, you'll probably just by default do a spin kick. Like it
well,
just turns into that.
yeah, well, like in Revelations 1, they did the same thing, except for they had a more like obvious stun state with that game. But what would happen is you would hold down, I think it was like the X button or whatever the button was on the DS, right? You hold that down, and then it would do like a powerful melee attack, and it was like the equivalent of a one Magnum shot or some shit like that.
or if you charge it up all the way, yes, it's actually very powerful. If you just do on the whim, then it's like very weak.
Yeah,
But it's a good get off me type attack when you surround it because you're completely invincible and it will stagger everything around you.
Shit. Now that I'm thinking about RE6, like they actually have a really good melee system in general. It's really, really good. And
Yes,
it's
it gives
not
you
okay.
just
Some animations are a little outlandish, but some of the others aren't. Like the others are pretty standard fanfare. So you know what? If there's an animation that you have to watch for to knowing that you will get the special melee attack, I think that's actually perfect. If they
and
don't
by the
want to
way,
do QTs,
so long as they don't bring back stamina, I'm be a okay with it. Because that was literally the biggest downfall for six for me. I hate the stamina mechanic. It's fucking garbage.
I was
But yeah.
indifferent.
No, it complete. You know, once you add stamina, you're completely halted.
Yeah,
It
you're
completely
screwed. I
kills
know.
you. Yeah, that's why I
Yeah,
don't like it. Like, let me do me and kick some ass. Like, why do I need stamina? Because the characters aren't even that powerful either. Thanks to
the
the stamina
stamina
mechanic.
really hurt Jake
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they give you his combat, like his hand to hand combat as a weapon basically, and you tire out after like 3 special moves.
You have to
It's
get the
just so
skill
much
that
fun.
extends his fucking stamina bar by like 3 more bars or something, and it still doesn't help. So like,
Yeah, I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
no, get rid
why?
of that shit.
like, like, but then then the problem with that though is if we have like a system like RE6, then we go back to the issue of like, okay, well then this game becomes too action focused, and
That's true.
that's what a lot of people don't
My
want. Like,
my counter argument to that, and I don't know why people don't bring this up. Fucking Village jumped right back to action. I don't know what people have been smoking. Like the intro of that game is action packed.
Yeah, right. It
You
is
have you have a
went back to
colossal
action.
brawl right back. Like it's almost RE4 level,
But
minus the
here's the thing
melee
though, like
attacks. That's it.
8 had a better balance between it though. Like, granted, I do agree it's definitely aimed towards action, but that's due to the circumstances at hand, not because of other factors, right?
uh,
But I
Just
do
comparing it to
definitely
7, I mean, like they jumped straight back to action. Like
yeah, that's
that
what I mean.
was a
Like, given the
tonal shift completely.
circumstances, that makes sense though. But again, Village
Yeah.
still had a good balance between its horror aesthetic and its action.
If they can balance it like RE8, that would work for me. I can live with that.
because I do think like going off of like Brandon's point too, like because they had that balance as well, and a lot of people kind of um I think a lot of people also pointed this out as well, is that this game or that game kind of had this hybrid style of like, hey, it's kind of plays like RE4 in the sense of like, yeah, it's a little bit more actiony, but then there are points in the game where you are like backtracking and using like keys to unlock doors and stuff like that, like in previous REs. So like, in that sense, right? Like thinking about like RE4 remake, right? Like I could easily see them doing that where they kind of have a middle ground where it's like, hey, yeah, we try to implement some things that would be more akin to those classic RE games. This game still has some more action focus to it, but to kind of alleviate some of the things that people who prefer horror based RE games, like, this is what we implemented to kind of have a middle ground. And then in that sense, I guess you could argue too, like, because this is something that I wanted out of like RE2 and 3 remake, is that they were more like the Revelations games if they were going to change them. So in that regard, I guess, kind of looking at that with like RE4 remake, like I would kind of want them to have that sort of middle ground, where yeah, there's some action bits, but for the most part, it does have like those horror elements as well in there. There's no um, one is too overpowering the other. It's just a good blend of the two. That's how
I
I
feel
would
like
want to.
Revelations games are definitely underrated in that sense, though, because they
Uh,
definitely do honestly the best jobs at
Yeah, I
giving
liked
jump scare.
Revelations 2 especially.
a lot of people don't give those games the credit that they need. They always just kind of point out, well, they didn't really like stick with one style over the other, and it's like, well, yeah, that wasn't really the point though. Like, like the point was to cater to everybody that wanted a game that was a horror based game, but in this new play style that that wouldn't necessarily alienate the people that liked the more action based RE games at the time. Granted, moving forward, if they do like a Revelations 3, we don't know how that's going to get handled, right? But like, we'll see, right? So like looking at RE4 remake, right? Like, with those like melee moves, if they do keep them in, is it going to be a thing of like, are they going to just make them too over the top and bombastic to the point where it just goes back to being an action game and doesn't really change anything and really kind of defeats the purpose of even having those horror elements, right? So that's kind of where I stand on that side of the fence, I guess.
Are we done with this one?
Yeah, I think so, unless if anybody else has anything to say here.
No, I feel like everybody pretty much got their point across.
Alrighty, which one of you guys want to read off number 8?
Hey,
How do you feel about PSVR 2 support being added to this title?
awesome.
I'm indifferent. Sure, I'm not really into VR, so I don't feel like I'm a good person to ask for this.
Honestly, yeah, I'm actually pretty okay with this though. It makes me curious though how they going to do it though. Are they going to do it in first person or are they going to try to do third one? Because I don't. Then again, though, that doesn't sound practical at all to do a third person in VR title,
Yeah,
But
for
yeah,
VR, it makes sense for it to be first person, but
I
I don't hope they
believe
pull some bullshit where it's like, oh, I can dual wield shotgun and pistol like the VR version for RE4 that exists right now. That is bogus.
I do believe there are some VR titles that are still in third person that you could play, even though there's no real reason for them to be played in VR. You just can. Um, it's just not a common thing, obviously, because most VR games are in first person. So I would personally think that they would do it in first person, and part of the reason why I think they would do it is just because we just got the RE4 VR game, right? So just to say that we have both, right? We have RE4 VR, and then we have RE4 Remake with VR support, right? Now you can play both the original and the remake in VR. So that's where I think the kind of mindset of it is, right? And not to mention too, because they showed off RE Village VR, right? I'm thinking, they're probably just going to want to have that just to, be in first person, just to say that, hey, look, we're supporting that. And, I gotta give props to Capcom for at least, trying to, run with the VR support for PlayStation and trying to implement that in their games, because there aren't that many hard-hitting titles to at least for me, right, to really want to consider getting VR. But like stuff like this, I would actually consider it just for the hell of it.
And the fact I can dual wield, man, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going on a power trip.
Oh yeah, damn well I'm gonna get the fucking TMP and like the shotgun and just start dual wielding that. Although I don't know how I'm gonna fucking
No,
pump the
see,
shotgun.
Let me
I'm
dual
gonna
the
go full
TMPs.
Halo. Yeah, I'm gonna go full Halo 2 up in this bitch. Get two SMGs. Big ass power trip.
Uh, yeah, yeah. Speaking of weapons, you want to go ahead and read off number 9?
Sure. Do do you think we'll see some new weapons and remove of others? Honestly, yes, I do expect a redux on the sandbox weapons, but what are they going to do with it? Good question. I think they will probably going to cut the fat on certain weapons and get rid of ones that honestly you don't that either have a unique utility or a class of weapons that you just don't need. Like for example, like the sniper rifle, I think they should either redo or get rid of the bolt action because the semi-auto completely
Yeah,
outclasses it. Like it's
yeah.
almost unfair.
There's just no reason to use bolt action
Like
at that point.
sure, it does more damage, but the other one has high criticals, so you can do pretty much instant headshots, and it has a fast firing rate and better scope, among other things, right? So like it is such a unfair comparison when you compare the bolt action to the semi-auto. So they either need to seriously rework it to make it something more viable, or get rid of it, replace it with another bolt action, I guess.
I think the
So
mine thrower is gonna go bye bye
Yeah, I think so too, but
because
honestly, I
nobody
kind of
uses
hope
it.
not. I hope they give it like another prominent feature, because it does have niche utility though. It has its uses, but compared to literally other weapons in your arsenal, like you're not going to go to that immediately.
so
Yeah,
so this is gonna be a tricky one, and I'll also bring up DLC weapons in a bit too, because nobody brought that up here yet. Um, I It's gonna be tough to say if whether or not they'll remove weapons. I think there's going to be weapons they remove, but they'll replace them with something else, perhaps.
Hmm.
I know you guys mentioned like the sniper rifle. I would personally, because I would argue, I've used literally every single weapon in RE4, and I've upgraded them with all their exclusive upgrades, so I know like how all of them work. And I would personally tell anybody, like all of the weapons in RE4 are viable, but there are some weapons that just outshine every other weapon because of their utility or their overall like performance compared to what comes before them or what comes after them in some cases, right? So I think the thing that really is going to be a kind of an interesting to see is like how they're gonna make those changes from a balancing standpoint, because you look at like Village, for example. Yeah, the weapons are there, but like you know, you end up using the last tier of every weapon because the last tier of every weapon just so happens to be better compared to the one that, you know, came before it, right?
But actually, I'm going to say this for Village as well. That also has a clear weapon dichotomy though, but each weapon still has its unique use.
Yeah.
But I'd say the first tier of weapons you're not even going to use because that's literally the starter ones. Next tier of weapons and the third tier of weapons, like those are two tiers you're gonna be focused on. Like for example, the shotguns. The second one is honestly a banger, pun intended. Once you max out all the way, all the parts and whatnot, it's literally the headshot machine.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
versus
So
the other ones like a good crowd control or a boss killer. You know, like it. All weapons have their own use though, but there's a clear hierarchy between certain weapon classes.
yeah, so that's why I'm like I'm hoping like I get why they do it because they want you to move on to the next thing because it, you know, it's like, oh, cool, like new weapon, it's more powerful. But
More
then
power.
I want them to also kind of like, I'm thinking about this from the perspective of how I originally played RE4 when I first played it. I never got rid of the first handgun in RE4 in my original playthrough because I was like, you know, so dead set on upgrading it to its full like, you know, potential. And I felt like, you know, it'd be kind of a waste to start over from scratch with a different handgun. Granted, I know now that's kind of irrelevant because of how fast you can upgrade things and whatnot. But that's how I kind of viewed it, right? So I kind of hope
Does
like,
pay off because the critical headshot thing.
yeah. So like I'm kind of hoping like same deal with like how I played RE4 originally, right? With like the remake, um, you know, these weapons that we start off with or we initially find, like if I were to decide to stick with them, right, that, you know, the overall payoff for sticking with them is worthwhile, right, and doesn't feel like, hey, you know, just because I stuck with them they're, you know, not as powerful or not as useful as those other guns. Granted, you know, I am going to want to try every gun, right, but like I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that like I'd like to have that sort of you know, that sort of choice of like, do I risk selling that weapon and getting the new one that and then start from scratch with my upgrades and ultimately end up spending more money for the upgrades, or do I stick with what I got and just upgrade them till the end, right? So
I think that will come naturally anyway because
yeah,
does that because you see new gun right, but do I want to spend it right now?
yeah,
Especially since like I say a boss is coming up, do I really want to waste my money on the new gun right away? And I could get resources later to later get that gun. You know,
yeah,
like I said,
yeah.
but that's gonna be natural.
I do expect them to make specific changes to the sniper rifle category. Um, and I also am expecting them to make specific changes to the uh, quote unquote machine gun category. The reason being is because we only have the TMP in the original game. Granted, you get the Chicago typewriter as post game unlock, but just base game
I
run.
would also argue the Matilda. That you can call it a handgun. I think it's a freaking SMG.
Yeah, but it's still
It might
post
as well
game.
be.
It's still post game. I'm
Yeah.
thinking like just base game, right? So I think they're gonna make a big change in that regard, where like, okay, um, here's the game. We have, you know, we still have the TMP, but like I was arguing, hey, you know, since we're in Spain, right, and you know we're in a rural part of Spain, wouldn't it make sense to also be finding like very outdated, you know, like, you know, automatic weapons, right? Like automatic submachine guns or assault rifles, right? And I was thinking
Yeah,
like
we don't have assault rifle class in two, right? I mean, sorry, not two, on four.
in four, right? Granted, I know Capcom likes to kind of generalize how they work like their ammo because they want to make it, you know, consistent,
Streamlined as
right?
possible.
Yeah, so like so I can see how they would streamline anything automatic as like machine gun ammo for gameplay purposes, right? So like I was arguing like, you know, a while ago that like, hey, you know, like it'd be really cool if they had like the Spanish set me because it's a very old like AR type of, you know, G3 HK G3 style like assault rifle essentially. I gotta pull up a picture of the set me, but like, you know, stuff
I
like
have one.
that. Like, oh, you pulled it up? Yeah. So like stuff that's like you know, granted, because you have like the Red 9, right? It's like it's World War One tech, right?
Oh
So
my god.
like, you know, like
There you go.
like imagine like Leon like running into like stuff that would have been used in like World War II, right? That's still fully automatic, but it still looks cool and would be very functional and worthwhile to get, right? Like I think that would be cool. And you know, we kind of saw that in Village as well, where like Ethan was getting like very old firearms, but they were, you know, very useful in what he had to do. And then of course he was getting new stuff as well, so don't necessarily think it would be out of the realm of possibility to see like Leon running around with stuff that was available at the time when RE4 takes place, right? So in terms of new weapons, that's what I'm thinking they're gonna have. And I also think the mine thrower, I could see them maybe removing that and replacing that with like a grenade launcher, maybe.
You know what? Yes. No, I didn't thought about that. Yeah,
Because
that part would be a better alternative
Something
because you just
something
use
more iconic.
RE3s. I just take the shit from RE3 and call it a day.
well, yeah, I would argue they could remove the mine thrower, replace it with the grenade launcher, right? And then because RE3 remake and introduced the mine thrower grenade rounds, you know, they can definitely implement that. I would just hope that they also, you know, revitalize all the different ammunition types from like RE3 original and RE5, where we had like things like freeze rounds, acid rounds,
Dead,
um, you know, all,
napalm, fire,
yeah,
all that.
all the cool stuff, right? Give me all that.
When you worry about Leon being OP, that grenade launcher on its own is a fucking character.
Well, okay, yeah, I
But
say that, but like, here's the thing, like, because I'm thinking about this from the perspective of like, okay, like RE3 remake, or even like, or I'm sorry, RE3 original, and then RE Code Veronica, right? Or even like RE1, right, and RE2, where they did have different grenade round types, right, but they were just very hard to come by. The most common one would have been the standard grenade round type, so that's why you would have hoarded a lot of your grenade rounds anyway. So I'm
on
thinking,
top of that, the effectiveness of the rounds against certain enemies, like the acid rounds, which is
yeah,
BOW gas, that works better against BOWs. Fire rounds, plants, standard grenade rounds, zombies. You know, there's a dichotomy for the grenade rounds, and that
yeah,
doesn't make the character overpowered. It's just how useful they are for the situation at hand.
yeah. It's a very it's a situational weapon, I think is the best way to put it. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking, you know, and granted, I didn't even get into like gunpowder mechanic because we don't even know if that's going to come back in this remake, which more than likely it will, since pretty much every RE since 7 has brought it or has had it. So I just hope that they expand upon it in this remake, you
Well,
know.
you know
More
what?
to
Let me
shove in
ask
my
this question.
suitcase.
Mm.
Let me ask this question actually. How will they handle customization for both the character and the guns? Are they going to give us a system like obviously they're going to have a system from RE4, right? But they're going to give us like the stuff from Village as well, and the
Oh,
craft
with the
system from Village.
attachments.
Yeah, add
Hmm.
attachments, whatnot. Maybe different ammo types
See,
for the guns themselves.
Yeah.
that might alleviate stuff like the bolt action sniper. Like, can I upgrade the bolt action so it's not slow
Can you
for
change the
starters?
ammunition type? Can you make enhanced ammo, right? Like stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, what do you guys
Like
think about that then?
I would
I'm okay
like
with that.
that. Like you know, cuz so this is the problem that I have with the gunpowder mechanic as it currently is in these remakes and in this you know, in both 7 and Village, is that it's very limited to what you can craft. Granted, 7 only limited it to handgun rounds and enhanced handgun rounds, right? Then you know, we had RE2 and 3 remake, and they allowed you to customize and craft shotgun rounds as well, and I believe grenade rounds for Claire, um, and maybe for Jill as well, but I don't remember that well because it's been a while since I played those games. Um, so I'm thinking like RE4 remake, like how are they gonna handle that? Can we get enhanced ammo, right? Because like we're dealing with these like more beefier enemies, right? And if we are getting enhanced ammo, can it be expanded to not only back to what we were able to do with like the original RE3, but also further, you know, where we can get maybe like more powerful, like, you know, machine gun ammo, or, you know, sniper rifle ammo, or, you know, grenade rounds that are, you know, in various types, right? Like that kind of thing. That's why I'm like, I think like thinking about what I would like to see new, right? That's what I would like to see. Um, but definitely
And
I
that's
am.
gonna be a fun balancing act though, because like think about it, enhanced ammo with SMG, like that's gonna be a DPS machine.
Yeah, or it depends on how they handle that mechanic, right? Because they could handle it in
Yeah.
a way where it's like it's not necessarily that it deals more damage, but maybe it increases fire rate, right? Or
Piston.
yeah, you know what I mean? Like they could definitely balance it in a way where it's like, hey, not every enhanced ammo has the same type of effect, which I think could definitely work as far as a balancing act is concerned. So,
Did we mention suppressors?
I think suppressors might be a given for certain guns, honestly.
Give
yeah,
us, give it back, you cowards, because Leon was supposed to use it.
I would like to see it just for, for bringing back the Garrador, for example, right? Assuming it's coming back. Like,
You know
definitely,
what?
like,
Yeah, you're right.
implement that into a more
That would be
core
a good change,
mechanic.
actually. I was gonna say, it just made me think about that in half a second. I think after you fight the first Garrador, maybe Leon will, after you figure out about the sound thing, you'll find a suppressor after the first encounter.
Yeah, like I
That'd be
would,
kind of nice change.
I'd like that. You know, I do hope that they keep this from Village, is where, any attachments you put on the gun or any upgrades you make on the guns, they stay, even after you sell the guns. So, like, that was a good change, and I do like that. It saves the tediousness of having to buy those weapons back, re-upgrade them to what they were at, and if you were trying to, max out all the weapons later on, right? So I do hope that stays. There is one thing,
Now, can we get FMJ?
right?
Start
Uh,
throwing on all the COD stuff.
there was one thing that I said I was going to talk about earlier because I kind of glossed over it, and that was DLC weapons, right? Because
Mm,
RE2 remake, we had DLC weapons. We had the 3 different Samurai Edge models. We had Chris's model, we had Jill's model, and we had Wesker's model, right? And Jill's model, they've been kind of really weird with how they handled that because it was based off of her Revelations version. But then when we go into Resident Evil 3 Remake, it is completely different from what it originally was to begin with. So it's like they're being very inconsistent with,
the kings of consistency.
like they're being very inconsistent with how her handgun was, right? Um, so I'm wondering, like, if we have DLC weapons, because we also had DLC Samurai Edge, Wesker's Samurai Edge from 7, right, in Village. I was kind of hoping for the Albert 01P performance model that Capcom licensed for Tokyo Marui to make a replica of, which hasn't been in the game just yet, but maybe someday that'll change, right? Um, I'm hoping stuff like that can make their way into this remake, even if it doesn't necessarily fit with the timeline for the lore because it's DLC weapons, right?
Wait a minute.
Um,
Wesker doesn't have his samurai edge, right? In 4. He has a silver gun.
Originally, no, but they
But
changed
in
that in
5, he has. Wait,
RE5.
but in 5, yeah, in
Yeah,
RE5, yeah, so that'd be a good change. Give him his fucking samurai edge. That makes no sense.
yeah. Um, but then that
You
makes me
know,
wonder: are they going to change it to look like the Seven's version or RE2 Remake's version? So,
uh, well, I guess to keep it air quotes consistent, they're probably going to use that model. But I wouldn't rule it out if they're going to use a whole nother model again, just
yeah,
for shits and gigs.
yeah, because like,
But then again, though, if you do Remake 5, though, they should explain how Chris got that gun in a way, unless it's like a mock-up version of the 1.7.
well,
Because you do shoot out the gun out of Rescue's hands, right? So I could
Yeah.
see it possible, like, Chris probably picked it up and took it.
I I highly doubt it because like I think in Seven's lore they mentioned that yeah it's a replica. As far as like IRL replicas, not shit that's in the game, right? There is another handgun called like that's essentially Wesker Samurai Edge, but it's got like all the umbrella like corporation stuff on it, and it has like the blue umbrella emblem on it. Um, Hold on, I know I sent this to Chaos the other day, but like, yeah, like the stuff is like it exists, right? Like Capcom licenses this stuff, and they were supposed to license a custom designed firearm for RE6, and they never got around to it, so it ended up in Vendetta. So maybe they could do some stuff like that where they just make original guns for the DLC. But then again, like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing shit like this make its way into one of the RE games, because it's not.
It's a nice looking gun.
Yeah, it's not in any of the RE games, but
Handsome.
this is the Umbrella Corporation, Blue Umbrella, like Samurai Edge essentially, right? But without all the like bells and whistles that the 7 Samurai Edge has. It's like, I don't know, like stuff like that would be cool to see as DLC. Because I don't think they'll ever do anything like more than a handgun as far as DLC goes. But like, what do you guys think? And if they were gonna do a type of DLC, like what would you want to see?
I'm gonna be quite frank here. The unlockable guns that we get in Resident Evil 4, which is the Matilda and the Chicago typewriter. I say that should be in DLC. Because Capcom just loves to take out things and put it as DLC. Case in point, look at the classic costumes for Resident Evil 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think it's 3 only. It's DLC. Like something like that. No, I see it as a form of DLC, or either that, or they'll force you to do some stupid arbitrary unlockment like the shop system. That at worst that could be the case. But yeah, honestly, I the way they handle DLC though, I have like no faith in this company to actually just let us have it unlocked. So I see that those guns in particular being DLC.
Yeah. I do have a problem with how they handle the DLC weapons though, and that we don't get to upgrade them. Like,
yeah, especially in Village, man, because the freaking Samurai is just garbage.
Yeah.
Like,
have we mentioned the Magnums, by the way?
No, we haven't.
Because we have, are we going to keep all these Magnums? We have like what, 3? Broken Butterfly, Killer 7, the one you get from Mercenaries, the hand cannon.
They need to, unify the Magnums, because there's no reason for the last one to have a separate ammo type, to be quite frank.
I do agree with that. Shit. Yeah, I do agree with that, especially because that gun is in 5 as well, and all the Magnums have the same ammo type, so like I do absolutely agree with that.
Honestly,
I hope the Killer 7 stays.
I think the Magnum dichotomy is fine, because you have one that's more powerful, the other one has a magazine, so you shoot out more shots, though. I think it's fine. They're probably going to keep it the way it was. At worst, we'll probably maybe see a extra one, but yeah, I think it's gonna be fine the way it is.
I think the Broken Butterfly might get changed to be more realistic, because it's actually a mashup of 2 different guns.
Really, no?
Yeah.
Shit up.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Kendo Gun Shop video where he talks about the Broken Butterfly. It is a mashup of 2 different guns. One of those guns happens to also be in Resident Evil Village that Ethan gets to use. So it's like, it just, I don't know. I would hope that if they're gonna pick, I guess a replacement. Maybe if they still keep the name but just replace the way that it looks, right? That would work. Otherwise, I would like to see like more of a like traditional like Spanish revolver as opposed to like a mishmash of American and Russian revolver, which is what they went with for the Broken Butterfly. So I don't know.
Oh, it's one weapon we haven't really talked about.
Yeah.
This is a big one, the rocket launcher. Because I say it's a big one because not just because it's a big weapon in general, but the fact that it easily breaks the game and makes it so you don't have to fight half the bosses in the game.
Gerald, quite honestly, so I'm expecting.
Will they mess with that though?
Probably. Because I mean, honestly, every RE for the most part that has an RPG or rocket launcher is going to be the strongest weapon. So I'm not necessarily bothered by it.
Yeah, but it's pretty. You get it so often in RE4, you get to skip like all the bosses.
You're talking about buying it?
Finding it. I mean, you find like 2, right?
Honestly, I'm not bothered by that really, because it's a one-time use for rocket, and given how expensive it is, though, you're not going to be buying it consistently unless you save up a lot of money by a certain point, right? So it's honestly it was fine the way it is, but they're going to change it. Though I imagine they're going to probably up the price for it.
Yeah, because I don't think they'll let the just delete all the bosses as soon as they show up fly.
Yeah, I think the balancing for that is going to definitely.
I tell
change.
you, I don't fight the right hand, and I don't fight Salazar. I always just delete them. I've never actually done it. Never actually done his boss fight properly.
I done them both legit on my first try. That's even before I knew you guys should shoot him with a rocket and call it a day. Same thing with U3 actually. You shoot it with a rocket and go up to it and knife it instead.
Okay, so
We can delete him, right?
Yes,
so I'm
okay.
glad you brought up the knife
that guy.
because I think we all have to agree that you know, if I don't have my knife exploit against Krauser, then we all riot.
Yeah, it's a failed remake. Damn it, Capcom.
Obviously, it becomes unplayable. Worst game in the series.
Actually, since you bring up the knife, it is a weapon. Can we get Krauser's knife to replace Leon's after we beat him?
Yeah, I agree.
I
That should
think-
have been an upgrade.
It's kind of dumb that he doesn't keep the knife.
I think like the knife upgrades is definitely going to be a thing, especially because that was something that Village introduced with like the karambit being an option that you could get later, and then obviously the lightsaber. But like, I think and then also like RE3 remake, they had the hot dogger, which was kind of like in reference to like stuff that they had in Umbrella Corps with the debrainer, I think it was called, right, or whatever the fuck it was called. But like, you know. Moving into like RE4 remake, right? And since we were kind of talking about a little bit about post unlockable weapons, right? Like, I could definitely see them having like a different type of melee weapon that you can get. I just hope that they don't make the same mistake that RE Village made, where like you have to keep the original melee weapon in your inventory. I hope that they get rid of that because
Yeah, because it was story required to have that thing on you all the time, which makes sense because you know he gets trapped in stuff where you need the knife to cut it. But I mean, I have a karambit though. It'd be one thing to say you need a knife on you. That makes sense. But if I have another knife on me, just let me get rid of the other one. And
change
use
the
that one
animation
cutscene.
change the animation to match the knife that you're using in cutscene, right? Or just have it where that cutscene is, you know, basically a cinematic where it only comes out in the cinematic, right? Like,
Yeah, that's true.
like I do hope that they change that because that was, to me at least, a dumb decision. Likely what they're gonna do too, like in Village, where you know, if you try to get rid of all your weapons, you have to have at least one firearm in your inventory, I think. So that's probably gonna be the. What's up?
Also makes sense because storage structure, you need to shoot things with your gun.
Yeah.
So
So
now, granted though, they could just say like, you know, you could just done the thing with cinematic, right? Because every time you pull out a handgun, it's always the one you start with the game, even though I sold it. So surely they could have just let that be a normal cinematic.
yeah. So I'm thinking too, like you know, because I'm thinking like original RE4, you could literally get rid of everything and just start running around knifing everything, you know. So I hope that like they at least give me the option to do that. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little too picky. So I don't know. Do you guys have anything else to add on this before we move on to final question of the night?
No, but actually I'm gonna read this off because I actually want to remix this.
Yeah, sure thing.
It's very important. Do you guys think they would add in all the game modes from the previous game, i.e., mercenaries, separate ways, potentially Simon Ada?
I thought Separate
Maybe
Ways
add
was
some
going to be in already.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, spoiler alert, leak alert. Yes, apparently Separate Ways is going to be in the game though, but you know, for those who are ignorant, we wrote it that way.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I think like the way that they're gonna handle Assignment Ada and Separate Ways is that they're gonna combine the two.
I agree because like you go around collecting files as in Separate Ways, right? I mean, not Separate Ways, Simon Ada, right?
Yeah.
But Ada's job is to go in and get a sample, right? It would make sense for her story because since this is literally 5 chapters in Separate Ways, right? And she collects 5 vials. Why not just literally have her collect a vial per chapter?
I think, yeah, and well, I'm thinking like this too because you know, in the extended lore, right? Because I found this out only recently that it, like with Vendetta kind of confirms that like, hey, you know, there's remnants of Los Illuminados still out there, and they still have samples of Las Plagas, right? So like thinking about this from the perspective of like RE4 and how it leads into RE5, and also I believe it was it Degeneration, the second CG movie?
Oh, that's the first one.
So Damnation,
Damnation.
right? Yeah. So Damnation, they had that whole hive mind of Plagas just stuck in test tubes, right? To like yeah, there's a whole fucking clusterfuck with that movie. But anyway, I like that movie. So, yeah, so I'm thinking like from a lore perspective, right? I could see Ada going around getting samples of Las Plagas where they're basic samples, maybe, or just lesser Plaga samples, and then the final sample, the one that like maybe Lewis was trying to get, which not Krauser, but Sadler would be holding on to, would be like another like like essentially like master Plagas type of sample. I don't know what the proper term would be in the lore, but you get what I'm saying? Like essentially
Like more of a pure sample.
yeah, or basically like the sample that would allow you to have like a hive mind where it can control all the other plagas around you if you were injected with that, right? Because you have the master plagas, so to speak, right? Or the higher plagas sample, right? So I'm thinking like that's how it would work, where she collects like different basic or lesser samples of plagas, and then the main one, right? To kind of lead into RE5 and how that leads into like Ouroboros and the Magini who are infected with those or that subspecies of Plagas that's new, right? That's enhanced by like the T virus and stuff like that. Which, fun fact, if you didn't know it, yeah, they're enhanced by like T Veronica, I think, in the lore. So it's like, yeah, it's stuff like that where like I wonder if they would expand from the lore perspective in that way. Not to mention too, Assignment Ada, if you really look at it, it's just kind of like it's there, but you're not gonna really want to replay it because it doesn't have the same replay value as Separate Ways does.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I had to leave for a second. What was the last thing you said?
I was just saying that like in terms of in terms of Separate Ways and Assignment Ada, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think they would blend them together, right? But I also think that like Ada would be going around collecting like lesser Plaga samples throughout the game, and then the main one that like Lewis got that was taken by Sadler would be like the main or like the host Plagas basically, or the like essentially like the master Plagas, the one that like if you were infected with that one you can control Plagas around you.
Yeah.
Type of deal. That's what I'm thinking. Because I think like from a lore perspective that would make sense, especially when we're leading into like RE5 with like the Magini and the Plagas that get essentially enhanced with like the T virus or T Veronica virus, I think it was in lore. So that's what I'm thinking, right? Is like from that perspective, I think that's how you could definitely enhance that overall plot point, because it wouldn't necessarily make sense that she only gets one Plaga sample, right? And then they're able to make like fucking hundreds of Plagas using that one sample, right?
Okay, well that's nice little monologue there. But I gotta ask though, the movies for mercenaries?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, that's bullshit that he's not in there.
Seriously.
I so here's the thing I would also argue here. Put in characters that aren't even canon to that game, like the game's story, like they're not even a part of that game's story. Just put them in.
Like RE5.
You look, nobody wants Reverse, right? Move all the playable characters from Reverse that aren't going to be in RE4 Remake Mercenaries, assuming Mercenaries is still going to be there, right? And push them into that mode.
Yeah, I would be mad if Chris got in there because it wouldn't be the first time that he started in a separate game mode, but he's not was in the main game, i.e. Resident Evil 2, because he was in extreme battle mode.
I do think that. I do think if they
what?
Hold up really quick. Like I do think if they put in like a version of Chris, it better be Village Chris and not 7 Chris.
I don't think they're ever gonna do 7 again.
You say that, but they brought in 7 Chris into Reverse. So what does that tell you?
Well, that
The
game's
part
stuck
because
anyway.
well, that game's such a unironically such a reuse asset type game that they decided to just pull that version of Chris in instead of just using Village. You know, 'cause literally like everything they use is literally ripped from the other games. So I imagine like don't fuck it since it's done, just make it and call it a day.
Yeah.
We need co-op for Mercenaries. I'm sick of this crap. They haven't we haven't any co-op anything for the Yari remakes.
Well, nice
It's dumb.
Resistance, but that's totally different.
I'm not counting that. I'm just talking what's part of the actual remakes.
Here's what
I
I
don't know.
want
Mercenaries is proven better with co-op as an option.
to. Here's what I want to ask you too, and I want you to guys answer me is like, as in as much detail as you possibly think this would happen, right? Or like how you don't think it would happen. Um, you know, RE Mercenaries, they changed the way that it worked in Village, right? And they changed the mechanics. And you could also make the argument that, if RE4 Remake brings back Mercenaries, they could change up the mechanics again, right? And they might blend in aspects from every version of Mercenaries. So what would you like to see out of that if they were to do that? Also,
Well,
really quick too, like also, do you think like Mercenaries would be, treated as a standalone title, kind of like how Capcom has been doing with pretty much every RE game since RE2 remake or RE3
Yeah.
remake, I should say. RE3 remake, because
If
RE3
they
remake
plan on
had that.
expanding it, like if they plan on really expanding it, yes. If not, no.
yeah, I agree with that though. But to answer the first question though, I want honestly the main thing I want is the vanilla experience for mercenaries. That's maybe my key thing. But if they give us the option to like have like the RE8 version of mercenaries, I'd be fine with that. As long as it's an option, not the mandatory. Because personally though, like okay, so as long as they don't balance mercenaries the same way they balance it in Resident Evil 8, I would be
Oh God.
okay. Because like the last four, aka the Village of Shadows versions of the maps, were terrible. They gave you literally no wiggle room, give you no weapons in contrast to the first four stages, and the enemies are a lot stronger. So like it was so unfair. It was bullshit.
Oh
Even
yeah,
I do not
getting
want
this
difficult.
triple S is nonsense.
yeah.
Yeah, I do not want difficulty modes for mercenaries. I just want one set
I
vanilla experience. Just let me go through it. Make the difficulty based on the enemies that show up on screen,
Yeah.
not inflated difficulty. I
yeah.
don't want that at all.
Me personally, I just don't want anything to do with RE8's Mercenaries to touch fours because Jesus Christ, maybe I'm a minority on this, but I think RE8 Mercenaries is trash. Just straight up, it's not even Mercenaries. What is this mode?
I
So
definitely don't agree with that. I have agreed because again the last four stages, but the first four they were fine. My beef was that though it's like a one shoot type mode.
It's
They
not
should give you
stages.
more.
It's the
It,
just real quick. It's not the stages. It is the way you have to play it. I do not like this wandering around nonsense. I have to know where all the enemies spawn. I can't. They don't come to me. It's very stupid. I don't like it.
See, like
The way it
I'm
works is
not.
dumb.
I wasn't necessarily against that though, but there was like a strong indicator where to go. And the problem is that it's literally a one shot mode. Whereas if you want the highest score, perfect score, you have to kill everything in the pattern, right? Which all right, fine, right? But there's not enough enemies on the screen to warrant a fuck up. If you fuck up, that's it. You keep going, move on.
It turns you into you have to become like a sweaty tryhard instead of just having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, granted, honestly, you can have fun with it, all right. If you
You
just want
can
to
if
enjoy it, right?
don't care.
But
Yeah, if you don't care about score and all that, you're just playing it for the hell of it. Yes, but on the other like RE4, 5, and 6,
mhm,
I can have fun with mercenaries and still get an S without really trying, just
yeah,
because I'm playing the mode and having fun. That's how I want it to be. Shouldn't be stressful. Mercenary is supposed to be dumb fun.
yeah. Which is why I say like that part of the reason why they should take up difficulty. I do not want that shit to come back.
The difficulty was garbage. The difficulty was fine in the other games. It ramped up on its own the further you get into it.
Yeah, because certain stages have different enemy types, right? So that right there is difficulty. Like there's this one
Just
stage, already
the
five.
stages, and the more enemies you killed, I think R6 definitely got harder as you went through it.
Let's say like in stages like in RE5 where you fight a bunch of lickers on their mercy, like that's difficult because they're lickers, like they're super strong enemies, right? So it's up to you how you handle that thing. There's no difficulty option to skill them up, right? Like no, none of that shit. Imagine playing mercenaries on professional mode in RE5. That one shot, one kill type thing. Like no, that would not be fun.
Yeah, no, the liquor would just snipe me, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, that should not be fun. So like I do not want that to come back at all in Resident Evil 4 mercenaries.
I did want to say too, like, because I definitely agree with like a lot of the points that you guys are making with like, hey, like don't make it like Village Mercenaries because Village Mercenaries is heavily, heavily, heavily flawed, right?
It is super sweaty
Um,
mode instead of being fun.
so I do really agree with that. The reason why I was asking the question was because I was thinking more in line of like, hey, take all the aspects that work in every iteration of Mercenaries, right? At least Mercenaries post RE3 Mercenaries, that is, right? Where, it is just you versus a bunch of enemies, right? Maybe, give us like no mercy modes like in 5 and 6. Give us character abilities like in Mercenaries 3D and in Village. Although I prefer the way that it worked in Mercenaries 3D where you have those set abilities and they only change when you're in the menu before you like prep for that Mercenaries like stage, right? Not, hey, you got to go grab those abilities and it's completely RNG based off of whether or not it's completely random as to whether or not you get the ability that you actually want, and that could completely fuck your run because you might not get the ability that you want or need, right? So I'd rather have it where you pick the abilities that you're gonna have, and you can edit them at any point whenever you're in the menu and not playing the actual mode, right? I would also like the ability to customize my entire loadout, which I think Village did the best in compared to any other Mercenaries edition that we've
I'll
had
say
so
the
far.
best and the worst.
I say the best in the sense of, yeah, I agree with how you put it, right? It's the best and the worst. It's the best in the sense that you can literally customize it the way that you want. The worst because you can't always go in picking what you want depending on which version of those stages you're going into, which really sucks because you're limited to only like one. I think it's like one gun, right? In the Madhouse versions, which is not fun. So don't take away our options, right? But I would also say, like, because if we're going to have multiple characters to play as, have it where, hey, we don't have to buy and select our weapons each and every time. Maybe just let us have like a point system where we can like put certain points towards, certain upgrades towards those weapons and which weapons we want, right? And determine what our loadout is going to be and go from there, right? I don't know, maybe that might not work, and maybe that's not necessarily a good idea. I really talked about Mercenaries in a separate video, which you guys could definitely check out. It's going to be in somewhere in the top right corner there, coming up right now on the YouTube video if you guys are watching this on YouTube. But yeah, that's how I would do it. Is like just give us different options. Don't make it like Mercenaries where it's Mercenaries Village Mercenaries where it's like the Mad Village, because that wasn't fun. That was not fun at all with the way that it was just, like James put it, you had to go a specific route, you had to get specific abilities, and those abilities were completely RNG as to whether or not you would get those abilities in that run. It was not a good time. So that's my take on Mercenaries. But that was pretty much all the modes, right? Like, I don't think unless if you guys wanted to talk about like separate ways a little more or Simon Ada.
Nah. Honestly, I just wanted to at least expand upon, give us more Ada. Honestly,
Yeah.
cause I really love Ada's appearance in Resident Evil 4. No, despite her being somewhat more difficult depending on this chapter or circumstance at hand, though. But I just love Lancer. She was her unique loadout was fun. Crossbow explosive bolts, fucking busted. I just want more of it, like not just 5 chapters.
Yeah.
That's about it. But
You, James?
well, actually, there's one thing though that we didn't discuss, and that is
Mhm.
Ashley and how she functions in gameplay.
Give her the suplex.
Okay.
Ah,
We can wrap up on this question for sure. Like, so how would we want Ashley to function? I personally think they should make her function a little bit like, you know, how the partners functioned in Revelations 2, where they could point out like hidden items behind, you know, like certain crevices and stuff like that.
I think you should give her more stuff to do as well, because in very select areas in Resident Evil 4, you can actually have Ashley go into a spot, unlock a door, and get an item, right?
Yeah.
They should at least have a little bit more of that. Also, I think you should give her at least some form of inventory management as well. Like give her like a very small box where you could store stuff in, either for her or just something for her to hold. Like what other guys I'm talking to say like no, maybe Ashley should have some way to defend herself. Like maybe have her toss a grenade, whatever, right, and get the fuck out. I'll be down for that.
Give her a taser.
Yeah, give her a taser, or hell, maybe have her actually have
Shit.
Leon. Oh wait, yeah, that reminds me. The guys I'm talking to literally said too, like, no, Leon didn't do enough to have Ashley defend herself. So in this game, since Ashley obviously gonna be different, right? Leon should at least give her something to defend herself with, either a taser, maybe a gun, teach her how to shoot a little bit. That would be a nice little change of pace for her gameplay segments because
I,
we know she's gonna be playable more times than not.
I don't think they'll do that, but I definitely think they'll give her like defensive items. So I could see a taser. I could see maybe like a brick or something, you know, kind of like that.
Give me nades, damn it,
Uh,
flashbang 'em.
I could see pepper spray
suplex
maybe.
city. I mean, what?
As dumb as that sounds, I could definitely see like pepper spray as a defensive item. As dumb as that
I
sounds.
think it's something stronger than pepper spray.
I
Can
know,
Leon,
but like you know,
can Leon at least give her a knife?
yeah. I mean, why not, right? So
I don't think he's gonna give her a gun.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know. Like this is gonna be very interesting to see, but like I do think that they could definitely find more ways to expand on that character.
Make her.
Um,
I don't know if they can make her improvise more. That would help.
Yeah, and not get in the way. Like, honestly, please don't give her a health bar. Don't let me shoot her, please. Don't give her a health bar. Make her offensive.
turn off friendly fire. I don't necessarily
Yeah.
mind the health bar. I understand why they did it that way, but turn off friendly
I
fire.
don't.
I can agree with the friendly fire, but her not being able to die takes the complete plot out, in my opinion.
No,
It's
okay,
stupid
no, no,
because
no,
now, oh, let me finish.
no. When I say
You're
take away the
supposed,
health bar, I didn't say not kill her. I meant like don't let me shoot her.
no, I see. I said the friendly fire thing. I agree with, but I was gonna say, yeah, the point is to protect her, and that it's the whole narrative. So they took out a health bar entirely. That would be really dumb. That would also make the skill gap go down too to some small extent. It's not that big a whoop, but I know narratively it makes sense. I get why it's like that. Plus, if you're good at the game, it's not an issue.
No. The AI still can fuck up. Regardless of how good you get, even if fucking speedrunners do, the AI will still can fuck up though. But here's the thing, I strongly disagree with that on that notion. Why? They don't kill her. You are the only person that can realistically kill her, unless an enemy. Oh shit! I'm spiking it. I hear static.
No, you're fine
No,
now.
you're fine.
Okay. What's saying? They go out of the way to freaking grab Ashley, not kill her, right? If she gets hit by an enemy, though, that's by extension of you being in the way of in front of the hit, and Ashley's behind you, she would get hit from that. Makes sense, right? However, though, I don't think that taking away the health bar would take away the skill gap though, because at the end of the day, though, you still gotta protect her. Like if she gets grabbed, though, you gotta go out of your way to save her. Simple as that, right? I just don't want her to take damage from me. If she takes damage, fine, right? But the health bar is not needed in my
You don't want to
opinion.
accidentally knife her.
Yeah,
I've seen that so
yeah,
many times.
yeah. I don't need that shit.
Yeah, like I agree with friendly fire. That's just stupid.
No, so yeah, I don't. I'm definitely do not agree on like taking away the health bar means it takes away the skill. Like no, you still gotta go away to protect her. Like, once she gets grabbed though, you gotta rush to save her. Simple as that.
You know, okay, so
How am I gonna feed her weed?
See, I was about to bring that up because I was going to say, you know what? There's one last thing I want to bring up before we wrap up here: the herbs, because we don't know how they're going to change the herb system here, the like health system, I should say. You know, because like RE2 remake, for example, which I really like how they implemented bringing back the blue herb, right? And they also brought back the red herb because they cut that out from 7 for whatever reason. Um, you know, I want to see how they're going to implement the yellow herb and how that's going to work if it's still in the game, right? We had a design for it in Resistance. I wonder if they're going to change it and redesign it, because I'm considering also too, because Capcom designed a green herb for RE7. They stuck with it for RE2 remake and RE3 remake, but then completely redesigned it again for Village based off of region. And I really like that change. I think that, you know, like the herb should look different in different regions, right? As long as they work the same, right? Doesn't really matter what they look like, but you know, the kind of nice little attention to detail, like, yeah, they're not going to all look the same based off of the region that you're in.
Yeah, well, you see, Dom, I found this content for how to use the yellow herb and all the other herbs.
Obviously, we got to bring back the purple herb as well, right? You know, purple Kush.
You don't you don't get poisoned in RE4, right?
No, you don't. But
I guess if you can get maybe the Novi. Oh God, I don't want to give them ideas.
so
Fucking
Yeah, don't say
Novistadors poison you.
see, here's the thing, like I'm not against the idea of them like bringing in that status. I know that sounds annoying, like to deal with, but it's like if they bring in the utility of the blue herb, right, for the most part with those defensive properties, like I'm all for it. Like I would like to see it where like not only do they have the blue herb where you could mix that in tandem with the red, but also keep in the yellow herb and change the functionality to, instead of it, you know, increasing your health per se, just have, you know, have it all already maxed out by the beginning of the game or whatever, and that's how I feel about it, right? But like change it to where your, you know, like maybe your not your damage out, like damage intake, I should say, but maybe like the
defense.
yeah, well the blue herb does that, right? So that's what I'm thinking.
No,
like,
I mean, permanently increase your defense. I'd
maybe,
rather it just increase your health points rather than anything else. Because honestly,
right,
it works that well. Just I'd rather have them keep that.
yeah, I'm just thinking like how they could how could they change it to have a second functionality, because like in RE7 after they're done being used, there's no reason to use them, right? Because I know people don't really like Resistance, but like Resistance had a thing where like your attack power, if you use the yellow herb on its own, right, it could increase the attack power for a small amount of time. So maybe like, you know, Leon can move a little bit faster and is more precise with his shots or whatever for a small time, right? Maybe they can make it act a bit like the psychostimulants from 7, right? I don't know. There's like different ways that I could see them having more functionality to the yellow herb.
Honestly, I'm probably just vanilla with this one. I really just them increase my health points and that's it. And let me sell them. Honestly, if you sell like a whole complete cash, you get a lot of money for it. So yeah, honestly, I'm just very vanilla. No need to like I guess
Realistic.
overextend
Yeah.
something, that you don't, that's not necessary. Like the changes they made with the blue herb and mixing with the red, because that's how you get your defense buff.
Yeah.
Blue and red gives you that defense, right? I'm fine with that, right? Because they also resist your poison, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't have poison in the game, then there's no point of necessarily doing that. Especially since the game itself didn't originally have poison in it.
Right, I understand that.
But hold on, I'm not done
Mhm.
yet. But on top of that, though, like if they're gonna change the yellow herb, then I'd rather them change it into a more defense matter, and, like increase either the damage I take, health points, whatever. Maybe
So
I don't know, increase my walk speed or whatever.
you would have it essentially, you know, take the place of the blue herb for the context of this game and the way that it works
Yeah,
in this
but
game.
make it more permanent up to obviously the cap threshold versus make it temporary.
I could see that. I Okay, so here's my question then. You know, because I know we're kind of strapped for time here at this point. Not really. I don't keep a time limit on my podcast. I don't give a fuck. But what I was gonna say was that like you know, as far as like functionality, right, or mechanically speaking, how they could function. Let's say like, you know, maybe now you can use the yellow herb on its own, right? Or maybe you can combine it with the red herb and use that still on its own without having that heal property, but still have the upgrade to the health, right? So that way you don't necessarily have to, you know, waste a green herb every time you know, want to upgrade your health. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like I think that would be, you know, like I'm thinking also like quality of life types of changes with that too. I don't know. I like having options. I like seeing different things, and I know maybe like going above and beyond and adding in a bunch of shit that wasn't necessarily there originally, like the blue herb, right, or like the purple herb, which was in Gaiden originally. Um, you know, stuff like that. Like, yeah, it wasn't there, but you know, wouldn't it be cool to just kind of see it, even if it's not like a thing that you're gonna want to use all the time, or if it doesn't really necessarily have a rhyme or reason to be there.
Hmm.
I guess.
Yeah, I'm mostly on Brennan's side of the fence with this. Like, yeah, the stuff is neat, but I realistically think Capcom is gonna be like, here's the health upgrade, call it a day. I don't
True.
know.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not. I don't doubt the likelihood of like, yeah, they're probably just gonna keep it simple. Um, because we don't know. They might also borrow the idea from like Village, where you get the like permanent health upgrades from uh from the merchant, right? Because that's how you got your like your upgrades from the merchant was you had to get the food items or whatever. He'd cook you up some food, and then that was like a permanent health upgrade or like a permanent defensive upgrade where you take less damage. Or I think I want to say there was another one for movement as well in Village, right?
I think so. And for garden,
Yeah, so like
which is why I said like, just make the yellow herb do all of that. But obviously, since there's gonna be so many in the world, right, just balance it accordingly based on the pickups, right? And after a while, you get maxed out, and it is what it is at that point.
right. Unless if, you know, I hope they wouldn't change it to where it's like, you know, the yellow herb is only a temporary health boost, whereas like getting the fucking food item would be the permanent one from the merchant. Because I think that would be really a really dumb change, but I don't want to give them ideas for that. You know what I mean? Because like that just sounds really bad, doesn't it? So it's, I don't know. Like it'll be interesting to see how they mess with the health mechanics. Because I'm always kind of like I don't. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily picky, but I kind of like what they had going for most of the RE games, where it's like, hey, you can combine your herbs. Yeah, maybe they removed like a particular one just because the functionality of it is just has no meaning or purpose for it in some of these later games, so that makes sense. But then like, you know, in certain games like Revelations 1 or RE7, where the green herb is like your only option, right? Or even RE Village, right? Your green herb is your only option. There's no health sprays, there's no red herbs, right? As like an alternative, you just have the green herb.
Well, in context of 7, 8 though, isn't like they don't have a replacement for it though. The chem packs, if you get a stronger one though, that increases the threshold for the healing, so it does make it the same
Well,
function as a red and blue. Sorry, red and green.
red and green,
Yeah.
right? Well,
So contextually, it's still there, just not the
not the same
stuff you
way.
refer to.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just well, and then in the case of the village's health system, they completely got rid of the option to combine with the red chem fluid, so you only have you just have chem fluid, and it just works
Oh,
as the one off. So it kind of works like in Revelations. So I don't know. I shouldn't probably concern myself too much about healing mechanics in a game that's not even out yet, right? But like
yeah.
I don't know. I like talking
That's the
about that
least of
stuff.
things.
Like,
That's the least of things we need to worry about.
yeah, but I figured I'd bring it up before we wrap things up because I figured, we didn't talk about like, hey, are they going to bring that system back where you could, upgrade your health, right? Because that was a system in that game. So we'll see, I guess. But You know, with that said, I think we can wrap things up. So why don't we go ahead and do outros? Brandon, where can we find you, good sir?
You can find me on Twitter at SirBrandel, Twitch at SirBrandel, and I'm gonna make a link tree for everything else I'm a part of. So I don't know when I do that because I get dance, but yeah, that will be there soon.
Yeah. And Brandel, or not Brandel. I have two
Yes,
Brandels in my mind.
Yes, I am
white one,
Brandel.
the white one. Let's go.
Yes.
Other half of the Oreo.
James, I don't know why I called you Brandel. This is how you know
Because
I'm
we
not.
are one.
Yes, as you put it, you were Team Oreo.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
where can we find the other half of the Oreo, as you so eloquently put it, whenever we play
You can find the
shooters?
vanilla side on Twitter at DevHunterJames.
Alrighty, and then you guys can find me as BioDevil_Dom on YouTube and on Twitter. Technically, I do have a Twitch, but I don't use it. And you know, one of these days, I probably am gonna try to attempt to do streaming on YouTube and just keep all this like streams unlisted on YouTube. But have a dedicated link where you can find those archives. So we'll see about that. But that's gonna be like a future endeavor. Until then, we're gonna be doing something for Callisto Protocol soon, and then also Tormented Souls, and all that stuff should be coming out fairly soon. So keep an eye out if you're watching this video and waiting for those two, or one of those other videos, and you're coming into this video already wondering, you know, what happened with this one. So anyway, my name's been BioDevil Dom. This has been the BioDevils podcast, and we will see you all in the next podcast. Bye.
Fuck yeah.